In the heart of the Jade Abyss, tucked beneath layers of ancient mist and emerald canopies, lies the Snake Realm. It is a world of shimmering scales and hidden secrets. Here, the architecture winds like a serpent's coil, and the inhabitants, shifters who transition between human grace and reptilian power, live by a code of strength and ancient magic. At the center of the capital, Ophiuchus, sits the Heart of Cinnabar, a massive, pulsating red stone said to be the fossilized heart of the first ancestor. Every 1,000 years, the stone awakens to designate the new king and queen, ensuring the realm's prosperity. The morning of the selection was sweltering. William, the first prince, stood on his balcony, his silver-black hair tied back with a silk ribbon. His golden eyes, slitted like a predator's, watched the preparations below. He was the embodiment of the Alpha ideal, disciplined, cold, and immensely powerful. "Your Highness, the elders are waiting," a guard whispered. "I am aware," William replied, his voice a deep rumble. "Has the general's son been accounted for? I don't want a repeat of the Blue Fire Frog incident from last week." As if on cue, a loud bang echoed from the lower gardens, followed by a plume of purple smoke. William's eyebrow twitched. "Leo!" William bellowed. From the smoke emerged a young man with messy, chestnut hair and a mischievous grin. Leo, an Omega who possessed the speed of a viper and the heart of a prankster, waved a soot-covered hand. "Morning, Will. Just testing the ceremonial incense. It was a bit dull, don't you think?" William descended the stairs in a blur of movement, pinning Leo against a stone pillar within seconds. The height difference was glaring. Leo had to look up, his eyes wide and twinkling with feigned innocence. "That incense has stained the marble, Leo," William hissed, his face inches from the others. "Today is the most sacred day in a millennium. If you breathe a word or pull a stunt, I will have you scrubbing the dragon koi ponds for a month." "Understood." Leo chuckled, reaching out to playfully straighten William's royal collar. "You're so stiff, Princey. You're going to be king today. Relax. Besides, you love my stunts. They keep your reflexes sharp." "I find them a headache," William retorted, though his grip loosened. "Go. Wash your face. Try to look like a general's son for once." The entire realm gathered at the altar of scales. The air was thick with anticipation. The great stone began to throb, a deep crimson light bleeding into the sky. The high priest stepped forward. "The cycle turns. Great Heart, grant us the alpha to lead and the partner to balance." A beam of blinding light shot out, striking William squarely in the chest. He didn't flinch. He stood like a monument. The crowd erupted. "Long live King William." William bowed his head, accepting the weight of the crown. Now, the stone turned for the queen. Usually, it sought out the most elegant noblewomen or the most tactical female warriors. The light spun frantically, circling the crowd. It hovered over a princess from the Northern Isles, then zapped away. It flickered near a high-ranking duchess, then vanished. Suddenly, it arched through the air like a lightning bolt, diving toward the back of the plaza where someone was busy trying to untangle a string of firecrackers. Crack boom. The light slammed into Leo. The silence that followed was deafening. Leo stood there, a half-eaten peach in one hand and a fuse in the other, glowing with a divine, rosy radiance. "Ah." Leo blinked, looking at the light surrounding him. "Is this part of the show? Because I didn't do this one." William's jaw dropped. The problem of the realm had just been chosen as the mother of the realm. "Absolutely not." William slammed his fist onto the council table. "The stone is malfunctioning. It's ancient, perhaps it has developed a sense of irony." "The stone does not joke, Your Majesty," the high priest said, trembling. "The bond is sealed. To reject the stone's choice is to invite 1,000 years of drought and shed rot." Leo was sitting on a plush velvet chair, swinging his legs. He looked remarkably relaxed for someone who had just been told he had to marry the man who had spent the last decade putting him in time out. "Look on the bright side, Will," Leo chirped, taking a bite of his peach. "You already know all my bad habits. No surprises on the honeymoon." William turned on him, his aura flaring with suffocating alpha pressure. "This is not a game, Leo. You are a troublemaker. You don't know the first thing about diplomacy, or tea ceremonies, or even sitting still for 5 minutes. How can you be the queen?" Leo's expression softened for a moment, a flash of genuine hurt crossing his eyes before he masked it with a smirk. "Maybe the stone thinks you're too boring. Maybe you need someone to make sure you don't turn into a literal statue. I need a partner who can lead armies, not someone who dyes the palace guards' uniforms pink. William shouted. It was magenta, Leo corrected. And they looked fabulous. William groaned, burying his face in his hands. He looked at the general, Leo's father, who was currently trying to hide behind a decorative shield. General, William muttered. Explain this. Sire, the general squeaked. My son is strong. He has the highest spiritual resonance in the lineage. He's just spirited. Spirited, William repeated flatly. He looked at Leo, who was now trying to see if he could balance a royal quill on his nose. The prince stepped forward, grabbing the quill and tossing it aside. He leaned down, grabbing Leo's chin to force him to look up. The atmosphere changed instantly, the comedy died down, replaced by the heavy, magnetic tension of their fated bond. The stone has tied us together, William said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous silk. But I will not let you ruin this kingdom. If you are to be my queen, I will personally oversee your training. You will learn every law, every ritual, and every duty. And if you fail, Leo didn't shrink away. He leaned into William's space, his scent, fresh rain and sweet nectar, hitting the prince like a physical blow. And if I pass, King William, Leo whispered, his eyes desafiant. If I become the best queen this realm has ever seen, will you finally stop looking at me like a problem, and start looking at me like your husband? William froze. For the first time in his life, the smart, serious alpha had no comeback. The great hall of Ophiuchus was a sea of shimmering silk and heavy incense. Thousands of snake shifters had gathered, their scales glinting in the torchlight as they hissed in hushed anticipation. This wasn't just a wedding, it was the binding of the two coils, a ritual older than the mountains themselves. William stood at the altar, draped in heavy black and gold robes that weighed nearly 50 pounds. His expression remained as stoic as a statue, though a small muscle in his jaw jumped every time he heard a muffled giggle from the preparation chambers. If he trips on those robes, William whispered to the high priest, I am declaring a state of emergency. Your Majesty, have faith, the priest whispered back. The Omega of the general's house is resilient. Suddenly, the great conch shells sounded. The doors swung open. Leo appeared, and for the first time in his life, the realm was silenced. He wore translucent white silks embroidered with silver scales that seemed to move as he walked. A delicate crown of moissanite and jade sat atop his chestnut curls. He looked ethereal, powerful, and, for about 5 seconds, regal. Then, he winked at a guard. As Leo reached the altar, he leaned in close to William, his voice a playful silk. Close your mouth, Princey. You'll catch flies. I know I look delicious, but we have a kingdom to run. William straightened his spine, his golden eyes narrowing. You are 30 seconds late. And your crown is crooked. It's called style, Will. Try it sometime. The high priest stepped between them, holding a golden ceremonial dagger. To rule is to bleed for the land. To love is to bleed for each other. Join hands. In the traditional snake realm ritual, the king and queen must shift their lower halves into their serpentine forms while keeping their human torsos, the form of the ancient ancestor. William's lower body shimmered, transforming into a massive, powerful tail of midnight black scales. He coiled with a terrifying grace. Leo followed suit, his tail a vibrant, iridescent emerald that sparkled like grass under a summer sun. Now, the priest commanded, intertwine. This was the moment of truth. If their tails didn't sync, the marriage was considered cursed. William extended his black tail, and Leo, with a cheeky grin, began to wrap his green coils around William's. Ooh, your scales are scratchy, Leo whispered loudly. Do you ever exfoliate, Your Majesty? Leo, shut up and bind, William hissed, his face flushing red as the entire court watched their tails weave together in a tight, intimate spiral. As their scales brushed, a surge of spiritual energy, the Alpha-Omega resonance, exploded through the hall. The Cinnabar heart at the center of the city pulsed a deep, satisfied crimson. The bond was sealed. I pronounce you the shadow and the light of the snake realm, the priest shouted. Long live the king and queen. The feast had been a blur of spicy rat meat delicacies and fermented nectar. Now, the heavy oak doors of the royal bedchamber slammed shut, leaving William and Leo alone. The room was filled with traditional, fertility incense, which smelled suspiciously like wet earth and lilies. Finally, Leo groaned, immediately collapsing onto the massive bed and kicking off his silver boots. My tail is cramping, my head hurts from that crown, and I'm pretty sure I accidentally ate a piece of the floral arrangement during the toast. William stood by the window, his back to Leo. He was undoing his heavy gold collar with trembling fingers. The serious king was, for once, completely out of his depth. Leo, William started, his voice strained. About the duties of tonight. I have high expectations for the decorum of. Thump. William turned around. Leo was tangled in his white silks, lying face down on the rug. He had tried to jump onto the bed and got his feet caught in the hem. A little help, my king. Leo's muffled voice came from the carpet. William sighed, the tension breaking just a little. He walked over, picked Leo up like a sack of grain, and tossed him onto the silk sheets. You are a disaster. How the stone chose you, I will never understand. Maybe the stone likes a challenge, Leo panted, finally wiggling free of the outer robes. He looked up at William, his eyes softening. Are you really that disappointed? That it's me. William looked down at the Omega. The moonlight caught the green shimmer in Leo's eyes. The playful troublemaker was gone, replaced by someone vulnerable and breathtakingly beautiful. I expected a partner I could predict, William said quietly, his hand reaching out to brush a stray curl from Leo's forehead. I did not expect someone who makes my heart race faster than a hunt. The atmosphere shifted. The comedy evaporated, replaced by the heavy, sweet scent of Leo's Omega. Pheromones, the smell of rain-drenched jasmine. William climbed onto the bed, hovering over Leo. His alpha aura began to fill the room, dark and protective. You've spent 15 years breaking my rules, Leo. Tonight, there are no rules. Leo reached up, his arms winding around William's neck like a hunter's snare. Then stop talking, William. Prove to me that you're more than just a crown and a scowl. William didn't hesitate. He leaned down, his lips crashing against Leo's in a kiss that tasted of nectar and hidden fire. It wasn't the polite kiss of a royal, it was the claiming of a predator. Leo let out a sharp gasp, his back arching as William's hands slid down his waist, feeling the smooth, warm skin where the scales usually began. In the snake realm, touch was everything, every vibration, every flick of the tongue was a language of its own. Will, Leo whispered against his lips, his voice trembling. I've wanted to break your composure since we were 10 years old. Consider it broken, William growled. He moved with a sudden, fluid power, his kisses trailing down Leo's throat to the sensitive spot at the crook of his neck. The Omega let out a low, melodic purr, a sound only shifters could make, as William's teeth grazed his skin, marking him with the scent of the king. The silks were discarded, leaving them skin to skin. The cold, calculated prince was gone, in his place was a man possessed by 1,000 years of destiny. Leo met his passion with an intensity of his own, his legs coiling around William's waist, pulling him closer until there was no space left between them. The heat in the room rose until the air shimmered. In the quiet of the night, amidst the scent of lilies and the sound of the Jade Abyss's waterfalls, the king and queen weren't icons of power, they were just two souls, finally finding the rhythm they had been searching for since childhood. As the moon reached its peak, a soft, green and black glow emanated from the chamber. The two coils had finally, perfectly, intertwined. 3 moons had passed since the selection, and the palace of Ophiuchus had never been louder, or more divided. In the Hall of Obsidian, King William sat perched upon his throne, surrounded by stacks of parchment, territorial maps, and bickering elders. His eyes were bloodshot from reviewing irrigation tax codes for the southern swamplands. Your Majesty, an elder croaked, the border skirmishes with the Mongoose clan require a firm hand. We need a strategist, not whatever it is the queen is doing in the courtyard. William looked out the high window. Down in the sun-drenched gardens, Leo was currently in his half-snake form, using his long emerald tail as a makeshift slide for a group of orphan snake children. He was laughing, his royal silks muddied at the hem, tossing sweet fruit into the air for them to catch. He is building morale, William sighed, though his own heart gave a traitorous thump at the sight of Leo's radiant smile. He is building a circus. The elder huffed. Later that evening, William was slumped over his desk in the private study when the door creaked open. A heady scent of jasmine and sun-warmed scales filled the room. Hard at work, or just practicing your grumpy statue impression? Leo chirped. He sashayed in, carrying a tray of chilled nectar and moon cakes. He didn't sit in the guest chair. Instead, he slithered onto the edge of William's desk, his tail coiling around the legs of the king's chair, and leaned in until their noses almost touched. "Leo, I am busy," William muttered, though his eyes drifted to Leo's collarbone. "You're always busy," Leo pouted, reaching out to trace the heavy golden embroidery on William's chest. "The kingdom won't turn into a pile of shed skin if you take a break. Come to the gardens. The night-blooming vipers are putting on a light show." William caught Leo's hand, his grip firm. "The council is complaining, Leo. You haven't attended a single session on trade. You missed the meeting with the silk weavers. You are the queen of the snake realm, not the entertainer-in-chief." Leo's playful expression didn't flicker. He leaned closer, his tongue flicking out in a quick, teasing serpent gesture against William's cheek. "But the silk weavers are so boring, Will. They talk about thread counts for hours. I'd rather talk about other counts. Like how many times you've looked at my lips in the last minute." "Leo." William's voice rose, a mix of roar and groan. "This is what I mean. You don't take the responsibility seriously. The stone chose you for a reason, but all you do is play and flirt." Leo pulled back, the playfulness finally draining from his face. He sat up straight on the desk, his emerald tail twitching with a nervous energy. "You think I'm just playing?" Leo's voice was uncharacteristically quiet. "Aren't you?" William gestured to the muddy hem of Leo's robes. "You're the daughter of a general, a queen of a 1,000-year dynasty, and you're sliding through the mud with hatchlings. Those hatchlings haven't had a full meal in weeks, William," Leo said sharply. William paused, the anger dying in his throat. "What? The orphans of the lower districts," Leo continued, his eyes flashing with a sudden, fierce intelligence. "While you're up here arguing about tax codes with elders who have gold-plated scales, I've been in the dirt. Did you know that the bully snakes, those noble alphas from the inner circle, have been stealing the food rations meant for the common burrows? They think because they're pure blood, they can let the street snakes starve." Leo hopped off the desk, pacing the room with a grace that suddenly felt very royal. "I don't care about trade meetings, William. I care about the people. I made a list." He pulled a crumpled piece of parchment from his sleeve and slammed it onto William's maps. "I want a royal decree. No snake, no matter how small or weak their venom, goes hungry. And if I catch an alpha bullying a lower-class Omega or Beta again, I'm going to do more than just prank them. I'll show them why a general's son was chosen by the Heart of Cinnabar." William looked at the list. It wasn't a mess of scribbles, it was a detailed account of granary locations, names of corrupt officials, and a plan for a communal kitchen. He looked back at Leo. The troublemaker stood there, chin tilted up, looking every bit the formidable queen the stone had promised. "You did all this while playing?" William asked softly. "Being naughty is a great cover, Will," Leo smirked, though his eyes remained serious. "People talk freely when they think the queen is just a pretty airhead. They don't realize I'm listening to every whisper in the shadows." William stood up, walking around the desk. The space between them vanished. He didn't scold him this time. He reached out and cupped Leo's face with both hands, his thumb stroking the smooth skin. "I am a fool," William whispered. "I was looking for a queen who could sit on a throne. I didn't realize the stone gave me a queen who could heal the kingdom's heart." Leo leaned into the touch, his eyes fluttering shut. "Does this mean I get my decree?" "You get your decree," William promised, his voice dropping to a low, passionate rumble. "And you get your king. I'll handle the elders and the paperwork, if you promise to keep dragging me into the mud with you." Leo grinned, his arms winding around William's neck, pulling him down for a deep, lingering kiss that tasted of nectar and newfound respect. "Deal," Leo whispered against his lips. "But first, I think the king needs some personal training on how to relax. The paperwork can wait until morning." William didn't argue. He swept Leo up into his arms, the scrolls and maps forgotten on the floor, as the golden light of the moon filled the room. For a time, the snake realm flourished in a way it hadn't for centuries. With William's ironclad logic and Leo's boundless compassion, the streets of Ophiuchus were filled with the sound of laughter. The queen's kitchens fed the poor, and the king's guard protected the weak. But in the snake realm, peace is often the quiet before a shedding. The sky was the color of a bruised plum when Elder Voran, the blind seer who had lived through 3 selection cycles, entered the Hall of Obsidian. His scales were dull gray, and his staff clicked rhythmically against the black floor, tap, 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 like a heartbeat counting down. William sat on the throne, Leo perched on the armrest beside him, feeding the king small pieces of star fruit. Elder Vorin, William said, standing out of respect. What brings the sight of the realm to our court? Vorin didn't bow. He stopped 10 paces away, his sightless milky eyes fixed exactly where Leo sat. A shiver went down Leo's spine. The air in the hall grew icy. The stars are bleeding, great king, Vorin's voice cracked like dry parchment. The heart of Cinnabar is weeping. A darkness comes that no wall can hold back. Leo laughed nervously, though his hand gripped William's shoulder. Elder, if it's the Mongoose clan again, William already doubled the border patrol. We're safe. Not from the Mongoose, Vorin whispered. From the fated bond itself. He pointed a trembling finger at Leo. I see a white snake in a field of red. I see the queen's light flickering. His thread is frayed, his end is near. The queen will not see the next moon. The fruit dropped from Leo's hand, rolling across the floor. William's breath hitched. He stepped down from the dais, his presence looming and terrifying. Watch your tongue, priest. William roared, his tail lashing behind him, cracking the stone floor. Leo is strong. He is healthy. How can his life be short? The great cycle demands a price for such prosperity, Vorin said, unmoving. The queen's life is the toll. William grabbed the old man's robes, his eyes glowing with a desperate, golden fire. Is there a way? A sacrifice? A ritual? Tell me how he dies so I can slay the threat. Vorin looked at William, a single tear of blood escaping his milky eye. That is the cruelty of the prophecy, my king. You ask how he dies. You ask who the threat is. Look at your own hands. William recoiled as if burned. The king shall be the blade, Vorin prophesied. The king shall be the reason for the queen's death. The one who loves him most will be the one to extinguish his light. The council erupted into chaos, but William heard nothing but the ringing in his ears. He turned to look at Leo. Leo was pale, his emerald eyes wide, but he wasn't crying. He looked at William with a terrifyingly calm pity. William. Leo started, reaching out. Don't. William screamed, leaping back. Don't touch me. Will, it's just a prophecy, He said I am the reason. William's voice broke, turning into a choked sob of rage and fear. I am an alpha. My power is meant to protect you. If there is even a fragment of a chance that my shadow will hurt you, I will not let you near me. You're being ridiculous. Leo shouted, stepping toward him. We've been together since we were hatchlings. You've never truly hurt me, even when I deserved it. Guards. William bellowed, his voice echoing off the obsidian walls. Escort the queen to the moon tower. Seal the doors. No one enters. Especially not me. William, no. Leo struggled as 2 guards, their heads bowed in sorrow, gently took his arms. You can't lock me away from you. That's not how we fix this. William turned his back, his hands shaking so violently he had to hide them in his sleeves. I am saving your life, Leo. Even if I have to break your heart to do it. 3 days passed. William stayed in the war room, surrounded by ancient texts on curse breaking, refusing to sleep. He wouldn't even walk past the moon tower. He ate nothing. He was a ghost in his own palace. Finally, a crash came from the hallway. Leo had used his general-bred strength to break the lock of his window and slither down the tower wall. He burst into the war room, disheveled, his white silks torn. Stay back. William jumped over a table, putting furniture between them. Leo, I am warning you. The prophecy said I am the cause. Then let it happen. Leo screamed, tears finally streaming down his face. I would rather die by your hand tomorrow than live 100 years in that tower without you. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Look at me, William. Leo walked toward him, ignoring William's panicked hisses. He walked right into the king's space, grabbing William's shaking hands and forcing them onto his own neck. Am I dying yet? Leo challenged, his voice cracking with emotion. Is your touch poisoning me? No. It's the only thing that keeps me warm. Leo, please, William whispered, his forehead dropping onto Leo's shoulder. I can't lose you. I would burn the entire realm to ash before I let a single scale on your body be harmed. If I am the danger, I have to stay away. You are not the danger, Leo murmured, pulling William into a fierce embrace, coiling his tail around the king's legs to anchor him. You are my king, my husband, my alpha. We chose each other long before the stone did. If death is coming, let it find us together. Don't let fear kill us before the prophecy even gets a chance. William finally collapsed into the embrace, sobbing into Leo's neck. The powerful, serious king was small in the arms of his troublemaker queen. I love you, William breathed. I love you more than the realm. I know, Leo smiled through his tears, kissing William's temple. Now, stop acting like a scared hatchling. We have a prophecy to outsmart. But as they held each other, outside the window, the great red stone in the plaza began to pulse with a dark, rhythmic throb, like a countdown. A week had drifted by like a slow river. The sun continued to rise over the Jade Abyss, and the marketplaces remained bustling. The elders began to whisper that perhaps the blind seer had simply grown senile, that the bleeding stars were merely a trick of the mountain mist. But William lived in a private hell. Every time Leo laughed, William heard a funeral knell. Every time Leo tripped, William's heart nearly clawed its way out of his chest. One midnight, leaving Leo fast asleep in a tangle of silk sheets, William slipped away. He didn't take his guards. He sought the Cave of Whispers on the outskirts of the capital, where Elder Vorin sat amidst the stalactites. You return, King of Shadows, Vorin croaked without turning. The prophecy hasn't moved, William said, his voice raspy from lack of sleep. But the fear is paralyzing me. Tell me, old man, is there a way to rewrite what is written in the Cinnabar heart? Vorin turned his milky eyes toward the ceiling. There is a ritual of ancient alphas. The aegis of the soul. You must forge a spiritual shield from your own life force and wrap it around the queen's spirit. It will act as a second skin, absorbing any blow, even those destined by fate. William took a step forward, hope flaring. Tell me how. I will give every drop of my power. The cost is not gold, William. It is isolation, Vorin warned, his voice turning grave. You must retreat to the chamber of the first coil. For 3 days and 3 nights, you must meditate. You will enter a state of primal rage, where your human logic dies, and your serpent soul takes over to weave the shield. You will be a beast. A monster of pure instinct. The priest gripped William's arm with surprising strength. The warning is absolute. No one must enter. No one must touch you. If the queen comes near you while you are in the primal state, your instinct will see only a threat to your territory. You will be aggressive. You will be mindless. And most importantly, you must not tell him why you are leaving. The shield can only be woven if the queen's spirit is unaware, otherwise, his own energy will reject the foreign layer. William returned to the palace as the dawn was breaking. He found Leo in the dining hall, cheekily trying to steal a honey cake from a servant's tray. Will, look, the chef made the star-shaped ones. Leo beamed, holding a cake out. William didn't smile. He looked at Leo, really looked at him, memorizing the way the morning light caught the emerald flecks in his eyes. Leo, William said, his voice cold and flat, a mask he hated wearing. I am leaving. I must go to the northern temple for a week of political purification. It is a solo ritual for the king. Leo's smile faltered. The cake crumbled in his hand. A week. Alone. Will, you just got back to normal. You've been so jumpy. Let me come. I'll stay in the outer courtyard. I won't even talk, I promise. No, William snapped, the sharpness of his voice making the servants flinch. It is a king's duty. You are to stay here. You are to manage the council. Do not follow me. Do not send messengers. Leo stepped closer, his brow furrowing. William, you're lying. I can smell the sourness in your scent. You're scared. Is this about the prophecy again? It is about the realm. William lied, turning his back so Leo wouldn't see his eyes glistening. I am tired of your constant distractions, Leo. This is serious work. Stay in the palace and play with your orphans. Leave the ruling to me. The silence that followed was sharp. Leo's breath hitched. Distractions. Is that all I am this week? Just stay away, Leo, William whispered, his heart breaking as he walked out of the hall. Deep beneath the palace, in a room of raw earth and ancient power, William sat. He stripped away his royal robes. He began the chants. Slowly, his skin began to itch. His pupils thinned into needle points. The primal rage began to boil in his blood. His mind, usually so sharp and logical, began to dissolve into a red haze of protective instinct. Protect. Leo must weave shield. His body began to grow, his scales turning jagged and sharp. He wasn't the king anymore. He was a mountain of black muscle and venom, a territorial beast guarding a treasure only he could see. He lashed out at the stone walls, his roars echoing through the tunnels. He was a nightmare of power, a shield smith forging a cage of love out of pure aggression. Back in the palace, Leo wasn't playing. He sat on the throne, his face set in a grim line. He thinks I'm a fool, Leo whispered to the empty hall. He thinks I don't know he's going to do something dangerous for me. Your Majesty, the general, Leo's father, walked in. The king has been sighted entering the forbidden tunnels, not the northern temple. The air around the entrance is toxic. The alpha pressure is high enough to kill a lesser snake. Leo stood up, his emerald tail shimmering with a fierce light. He's trying to save me in secret again. That stubborn, beautiful idiot. Leo, wait. The general called out. The priest said no one should go near. The priest isn't his husband. Leo shouted back, already running toward the tunnels. If William is in pain, if he's losing his mind in the dark, I'm not staying here to eat honey cakes. I don't care about rituals. I care about him. Leo reached the heavy stone doors of the first coil. The ground was shaking. From inside, a roar erupted that sounded like 1,000 dying stars. It wasn't William's voice, it was the sound of a monster. William. Leo hammered on the door. Open this door or I'll blow it off its hinges. I'm coming in. He didn't know that inside, the monster had just heard a sound. To a mindless, primal alpha, a sound at the door wasn't a husband. It was an intruder. It was a target. The prophecy whispered in the dark, the king shall be the reason. The heavy stone doors of the chamber of the first coil groaned and shuddered. Leo, fueled by a mixture of desperate love and stubborn defiance, poured his spiritual energy into the ancient locks. With a final, echoing thud, the seal broke. William. Leo stepped into the darkness. The air inside was thick, tasting of ozone and raw, metallic blood. The floor was slick with the condensation of intense spiritual pressure. In the center of the cavern, a monstrous silhouette writhed. William's human form was almost lost, his torso was covered in jagged, obsidian scales, and his eyes were no longer gold, they were glowing, mindless pits of crimson fire. He was in the final stage of weaving the aegis of the soul. A shimmering, translucent web of red energy was suspended in the air, connected to his own heart. Will, it's me, Leo whispered, his voice trembling as he stepped closer. Please, stop this. You're killing yourself to save me. I don't want a shield if it costs me you. But the creature that occupied William's body didn't hear, Leo. In the primal state, the logical mind was dead. The beast heard only a vibration in its territory, a disruption of the sacred weaving. To the monster, this was an assassin come to break the shield. The beast let out a sound, not a name, but a guttural, bone-chilling hiss. William, look at me. Leo cried, reaching out his hand. It's Leo. Your troublemaker. You're. In a blur of movement too fast for the human eye to track, the black mass lunged. A massive, clawed hand, infused with the crushing weight of alpha pressure, struck out to eliminate the threat. Leo didn't even have time to shift into his serpent form to defend himself. The blow caught him squarely in the chest, the force of it throwing him across the cavern. He hit the stone wall with a sickening crack, and the shimmering red shield William had been weaving, the very thing meant to protect him, shattered like glass. The sudden explosion of spiritual energy acted like a bucket of ice water on William's psyche. The red haze evaporated. The jagged scales receded. The monster vanished, leaving a gasping, naked, and trembling king standing in the ruins of the chamber. Leo. William croaked, his voice returning. He looked at his hands. They were stained with emerald-tinted blood. His logical mind returned with the force of a tidal wave, and with it, the memory of the strike. No. William scrambled across the rocks, his knees scraping until they bled. He reached the crumpled form of the queen. Leo lay against the cold stone, his white silks now a gruesome tapestry of crimson and crushed silver. William gathered him into his arms, pulling Leo's head against his chest. Leo, wake up. It's a joke, right? You're pulling a stunt. You're going to jump up and tell me I look like a grumpy statue. Please, Leo, say it. Leo's eyes fluttered open. The vibrant emerald was fading, turning into the dull color of a dying leaf. He tried to speak, but a thin trail of blood escaped his lips. Instead, Will. Leo's voice was a ghost of a whisper. Don't speak. I'll get the healers. I'll give you my life force, William sobbed, his tears falling onto Leo's pale cheeks. The priest was right. I am a monster. I tried to build a wall around you, and I crushed you with it. I killed you. I killed my own heart. Leo reached up, his hand shaking violently. He didn't use his last strength to push William away. Instead, he gently touched the king's tear-stained face, his thumb brushing over William's lip. Not your fault, Leo wheezed, a small, heartbreaking smile touching his face. The stone was right. You're the king. You did everything to protect me. I did nothing. William screamed into the empty cavern. I was supposed to be the smart one. The serious one. And I let my fear destroy the only beautiful thing in this realm. Leo's breath was becoming shallow, hitched. He pulled William's head down, pressing their foreheads together one last time. Will, listen, Leo whispered. Don't go back to being a statue. Keep feeding the orphans. Keep the realm kind. Promise me. I can't do it without you, William pleaded, clutching Leo so tightly it was as if he could weld their souls back together. Leo, stay. I'll give you the crown, I'll give you everything. Just don't leave me in the dark. Leo's hand slipped from William's face, falling heavily onto the stone. His eyes stayed fixed on William's, full of a love so pure it burned. I love you, Princey. With one final, soft exhale, the light in Leo's eyes went out. The warmth left his body, leaving William holding a cold weight of silken shattered dreams. William didn't roar this time. He didn't scream. The silence that filled the chamber was more terrifying than any battle cry. He sat there, cradling the queen's body, rocking back and forth as the cold shadows of the Cave of Whispers closed in. The prophecy was fulfilled. The king had been the blade. The great red stone in the plaza above suddenly turned a dull, lifeless gray, as if the heart of the realm itself had stopped beating along with its queen. I'm here, Leo, William whispered into the dead Omega's hair. I'm here. I won't leave you in the dark ever again. Outside, the rain began to fall over the snake realm. Not a cleansing rain, but a cold, morning drizzle that felt like the tears of a 1,000-year-old god. The Jade Abyss forgot how to weep, it could only drown. For 2 suns and 2 moons, a suffocating, heavy gray mist hung over the capital of Ophiuchus. The vibrant marketplaces were abandoned, the laughter in the queen's kitchens had turned into silent, choked sobs, and the once glowing Heart of Cinnabar in the plaza pulsed with a weak, sickly violet light. The snake realm had lost its queen, and with him, its joy. Inside the royal bedchamber, the air was as cold as a tomb. The doors were barred from the inside with thick coils of black, spiritual energy. William had not moved for 48 hours. He sat on the floor beside the great silk bed, holding Leo's pale, lifeless hand against his cheek. Come on, Leo, William whispered, his voice a dry, broken rasp. He pushed another wave of his golden alpha energy into the Omega's chest, shivering as his own life force drained. You always bounce back. You survive falling out of trees, you survive my punishments, you can survive this. Just open your eyes. I'll let you paint the whole palace magenta. I swear it. But the energy simply dissipated into the cold air. Your Majesty, please. The muffled voice of the high priest pleaded from the other side of the heavy doors. The queen has crossed the veil. You are killing yourself. You must let him go. He is not gone. William roared, his eyes flashing with a terrifying, hollow madness. He is just resting. Leave us. The Viper's opportunity. News of a broken king spreads faster than a forest fire. Far beyond the borders of the Jade Abyss, across the venomous wastes, the Iron Viper clan had been waiting. Their leader, Lord Kalen, a massive, scarred alpha who had long coveted the wealth of Ophiuchus and the power of the Red Stone, received the scouts' reports with a sinister grin. The Alpha King sits crying in the dark over a dead Omega, Kalen sneered, drawing his curved blade. And the Heart of Cinnabar is unguarded. March the army. By nightfall, the Snake Realm will be mine. The attack was swift and devastating. Without William to lead the spiritual resonance of the army, the palace guards were overwhelmed. The outer walls fell within hours. Plumes of black smoke rose into the weeping sky as the Iron Vipers breached the lower courtyards. Panic consumed the royal council. The general, Leo's father, his armor dented and soaked in blood, battered his fists against William's bedroom door. "William, open this door," the general screamed over the sound of clashing steel below. "The Iron Vipers are in the city. They are slaughtering the people." Silence answered him. The general fell to his knees, tears of grief and rage cutting through the soot on his face. "William, listen to me. My son is dead. My boy is gone. Do you think he would want you sitting in the dark while the orphans he fed are slaughtered? Leo loved this kingdom. He loved you. If you let this realm burn, you are letting his memory burn with it. Get up and be the king my son died for." Inside the cold room, William froze. The words pierced through the thick, drowning fog of his madness. He looked down at Leo's peaceful face. He remembered the fierce, beautiful look in Leo's eyes when he demanded the decree to feed the starving snakes. "I care about the people, William. Keep the realm kind. Promise me." William's hands trembled. He leaned down, pressing his lips to Leo's ice-cold forehead in a long, agonizing kiss. "I promise, my troublemaker," William whispered. "Wait for me. I won't be long." The courtyard was a scene of chaos. Lord Kalen stood amidst the rubble, laughing as his soldiers marched toward the plaza where the Heart of Cinnabar flickered. "Pathetic," Kalen bellowed. "Is this the great dynasty? Where is your—" The massive obsidian doors of the palace exploded outward, shattering into thousands of deadly projectiles. From the dust and debris walked King William. He wore no armor, only his mourning robes of black silk. His silver hair hung loose, and his golden eyes did not burn with the regal fire of a king. They burned with the empty, terrifying void of a man who had nothing left to lose. The very air grew heavy, suffocating the enemy soldiers under an overwhelming alpha pressure. "You dare step into his garden." William's voice was dangerously quiet, yet it echoed across the entire battlefield. With a burst of speed that cracked the stone beneath his feet, William launched himself at Kalen. The fight was cataclysmic. They clashed, blades sparking, tails whipping and smashing marble pillars to dust. William fought like a demon, his grief translating into raw, brutal power. He severed the Viper soldiers who dared to intervene, driving Kalen back, step by bloody step. William disarmed Kalen with a vicious strike, kicking the Viper Lord to his knees. The king raised his sword for the final blow. "Die," William hissed. But Kalen's terrified expression morphed into a twisted, desperate sneer. From his robes, he pulled a hidden dagger, the Soul Drinker, a cursed demon blade forged in the abyss. It was a weapon that carried absolute death. A single scratch severed the soul from the body. As William swung down, Kalen thrust the demon blade upward. Swing. William gasped. The cursed blade sank deep into his abdomen, right below his ribs. Black, necrotic veins instantly spider-webbed across William's skin from the wound, poisoning his blood and eating away his spiritual core. William's sword clattered to the ground. He collapsed to his knees, gripping his chest. His vision immediately began to darken at the edges, a freezing cold sweeping through his veins. There was no surviving the Soul Drinker. It was an absolute death sentence. Kalen coughed up blood, staggering to his feet and laughing a wet, hideous laugh. "You lose, King of Shadows. The demon sword takes your soul. The red stone is mine." William knelt on the shattered marble. The darkness was pulling him down, heavy and seductive. It would be so easy to just close his eyes. It would be so easy to just slip away and find Leo in the dark. But as his eyes fluttered shut, he didn't see darkness. He saw a burst of bright, chaotic emerald green. He heard the sound of a firecracker. He saw a messy-haired Omega with a peach in his hand, smiling at him with the warmth of 1,000 suns. "If I become the best queen this realm has ever seen, will you finally stop looking at me like a problem, and start looking at me like your husband?" William's eyes snapped open. The golden irises flared one last time, overpowering the black veins of the curse. He was an alpha. He was the king, and he had made a promise to his queen. With a deafening, earth-shattering roar that forced every soldier on the battlefield to their knees, William surged upward, ignoring the demon blade buried in his gut. Kalen's laughter cut off in a choke of pure terror. "No, that's impossible." William didn't use a sword. He used his bare hand, cloaked in dense, jagged black scales and raw spiritual lightning. He drove his hand straight through Kalen's chest, crushing the Iron Viper's heart in his grip. Kalen slumped backward, dead before he hit the ground. The enemy army, seeing their invincible leader destroyed by a dying man, broke ranks and fled in absolute terror. The realm was safe. The orphans were safe. William stood for a moment, looking out over the Jade Abyss. The pain was gone now, replaced by a deep, numbing peace. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. "I kept my promise, Leo," William whispered to the wind. "I'm coming home." The king collapsed onto the ruined courtyard. He took one final, slow breath, closing his eyes, and finally let go. A terrible silence fell over Ophiuchus. The ministers, the surviving guards, and the general slowly approached the fallen king. As William's heart stopped, a loud crack echoed from the center of the city. The Heart of Cinnabar, the great red stone that had chosen them, shattered into dust and vanished into the wind. The realm was officially without a king, without a queen, and without its magic. The crowd began to weep, dropping to their knees in despair. "Silence," a cracked voice commanded. Elder Voron, the blind seer, walked through the crowd. His milky eyes were focused, his presence commanding. "Bring the queen. Bring him here, into the light." Guards rushed to the royal chambers, gently carrying Leo's body wrapped in clean white silks. They laid him on the courtyard stones, right beside William. Even in death, when placed together, the king and queen looked like two halves of a perfect, tragic whole. William's hand rested inches from Leo's. Voron raised his wooden staff, slamming it against the stone. "Weep not for an end, for the snake only sheds its skin to grow anew." Voron chanted, his voice echoing with ancient power. "They have crossed the veil, and the stone has followed them into the dark. But their bond was forged in the first coil. It cannot be broken by a mere demon's blade." The priest began to weave his hands over their bodies, drawing a complex array of glowing silver runes in the air. The bodies of William and Leo began to dissolve into countless motes of brilliant light, gold and emerald, swirling upward into the stormy sky, intertwining as they vanished. "I have cast their souls into the great wheel of reincarnation," Voron proclaimed, turning to the stunned ministers and the general. "They will be reborn into a new age. A new world. But beware, when they open their eyes in their next life, they will not remember us. They will not remember their crowns, or the Jade Abyss, or the tragedy that tore them apart." The general stepped forward, gripping his sword. "Then what do we do, Elder?" "We wait," Voron said, his blind eyes turning toward the horizon. "We rebuild our realm in the shadows, and we search. It may take 100 years, or 1,000. But one day, the Alpha of Shadows and the Omega of Light will walk the earth again. It will be our duty to find them, to protect them, and to make them remember who they are." Voron pointed his staff at the empty pedestal where the red stone once sat. "Only when they remember their love, and only when they find each other again, will the Heart of Cinnabar return. Until then, the snake realm sleeps." For 5 centuries, the Jade Abyss existed as a ghost story. Hidden beneath impenetrable layers of illusion magic, the immortal snake shifters waited in a world where time seemed to hold its breath. They walked in the shadows of the modern era, their scouts infiltrating every hidden corner of the earth. They scoured the ancient vampire covens of Europe, tracked scents through the werewolf territories of the frozen north, and even braved the sulphurous pits of the demon realms. Yet, for 500 years, the wheel of fate remained silent. The souls of King William and Queen Leo were nowhere to be found. Until today. In the dust-covered hall of obsidian, Elder Voron suddenly dropped his wooden staff. The clatter echoed like a gunshot. The blind seer fell to his knees, his hands trembling as he pressed them against the cold stone floor. Elder. The general, Leo's father from a lifetime ago, rushed forward, his immortal face unaged but weary. "What is it? Are we under attack?" "No," Voron gasped, a tear of pure, luminous energy escaping his blind eyes. "The wheel has turned. The stars are aligning. I feel them, General. The shadow and the light." The remaining ministers gasped, surging forward. "Where?" the general demanded, his voice cracking with 500 years of dormant hope. "Which realm?" "The human realm," Voron breathed, a smile stretching across his weathered face. "They have been reborn as humans. And the fates have a sense of humor, their souls have already collided. They have found each other on their own. We only need to find their physical bodies and shatter the mortal glass around their memories." While the snake realm prepared to awaken, the human world was oblivious, moving at the frantic pace of the 21st century. At Crestview University, an elite institution where the tuition was higher than a small country's GDP, wars were not fought with swords and magic. They were fought with designer shoes, academic rankings, and vicious glares. Currently, the West Wing corridor was effectively a war zone. Two groups of students stood facing each other, blocking the marble hallway completely. On the left stood the Leo faction. They were dressed impeccably in bright, avant-garde designer brands. On the right was the William faction, clad in sharp, dark, tailored blazers and exuding an aura of old money intimidation. In the center of this standoff, two young men were locked in a staring contest so intense it could have melted glass. Leo, the spoiled, brilliant Omega and youngest heir to a shipping empire, stood with his arms crossed. His chestnut curls were perfectly styled, and his hazel eyes narrowed into terrifying slits. Before this year, Leo had been the undisputed king of Crestview. He was the top student, the president of the social committee, and the center of the universe. Then he transferred in. William, the sole alpha heir to a global tech conglomerate, stood opposite him. He was terrifyingly tall, his silver blonde hair combed back meticulously. His sharp, golden brown eyes looked at Leo not with anger, but with an exasperated, freezing indifference. William had effortlessly taken the top academic spot, dominated the fencing team, and generally acted like Leo was an annoying insect buzzing around his perfectly organized life. They couldn't stand each other. "Your leader is a thief," shouted Julian, one of Leo's lackeys, breaking the silence. "He totally bribed Professor Vance." "Oh, please," scoffed Marcus, William's right-hand man, adjusting his glasses. "William doesn't need to bribe anyone. Your precious Leo is just too lazy to finish a market analysis without taking a 3-hour nap in the student lounge." "I was networking in the lounge, you spreadsheet-obsessed drone," Leo snapped, his voice sharp and melodic. He finally broke the staring contest, taking a menacing step toward William. William didn't flinch. He just looked down his perfectly straight nose at the Omega. 3 months, Leo hissed, poking a very expensive, manicured finger directly into the center of William's chest. "I worked on the eco-logistics project for 3 months, William. I surveyed the ports. I wrote the proposal. And today, Vance hands the lead over to you. You obviously bad-mouthed me to him." "Remove your finger," William said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that sent an annoying, unexplainable shiver down Leo's spine. "Make me, you robotic jerk," Leo shot back, poking him again harder. "Admit it. You couldn't handle the fact that I was going to beat you at the annual business showcase, so you played dirty." William sighed, a sound that conveyed centuries of exhaustion, though he didn't know why. "Leo, your project was a disaster. You proposed using solar-powered yachts for commercial shipping. It's logistically absurd. Professor Vance transferred the project to me because I submitted a secondary proposal based on actual mathematics, not a fairy tale you dreamed up between spa appointments. It's called visionary thinking." Leo threw his hands in the air, turning to his group for support. "Did you hear him? He thinks saving the ocean is a fairy tale. You're practically a cartoon villain, William. And you were a child throwing a tantrum in a hallway," William replied smoothly, adjusting the cuff of his blazer. "Now, if you're done screeching, I have a project to salvage. Some of us actually work for our grades." The corridor erupted. "Who are you calling a child?" Julian yelled, lunging forward, only to be held back by 2 other Omegas. "Don't touch the blazer, the fabric costs more than your car." Marcus yelled back, stepping in front of William. While their respective posses devolved into a chaotic, loud argument about whose family had more influence and whose fashion sense was more offensive, Leo and William stepped closer to each other, completely ignoring the noise around them. The proximity between them was always strange. Whenever they fought like this, standing chests apart, the air grew thick. An invisible static crackled between them. Leo hated it because it made his heart race in a way that felt entirely too vulnerable. William hated it because it made his usually flawless, logical mind short-circuit, filling his head with bizarre, fleeting images of red stones and dark caves. "You think you're so smart, Alpha," Leo whispered, his voice dropping an octave, meant only for William. "You think you can just march in here and take my crown?" William looked down into Leo's eyes, a strange, possessive instinct flaring in his chest that he immediately tried to ruthlessly suppress. Why does he use that word? Crown. "I didn't take anything," William replied, leaning in just a fraction of an inch, his voice a low rumble. "You dropped it because it was too heavy for a brat like you." "I just picked it up." Leo's breath hitched, a furious blush painting his cheeks. Watch your back, William. I'm going to ruin your presentation. I will personally ensure you look like an idiot on that stage. I look forward to watching you try, William smirked, a rare, chilling expression. Just don't trip over your own ego on the way to the auditorium. William turned on his heel, his dark coat swishing sharply. Marcus, we're leaving. Let the daycare handle themselves. As William's group marched down the hall, Leo stood trembling with rage, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He glared at William's broad back, a strange, twisting feeling in his gut that felt like a mixture of pure hatred and something ancient and aching that he couldn't name. I hate him, Leo muttered to himself, stomping his foot. I absolutely, categorically hate him. Miles away, in the hidden depths of the Jade Abyss, Elder Voran smiled, feeling the massive surge of spiritual friction crackling in the human world. They are fighting, the blind seer chuckled to the general. Oh, yes. The fated mates have definitely found each other. The grand auditorium of Crestview University was a temple of academia, all polished mahogany and plush velvet seating. Today, it was packed. The front row was lined with VIP guests, CEOs, university board members, and potential investors for the Eco-Logistics Initiative. On stage stood William. He was in his element, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit, a laser pointer casually held in his hand. He exuded pure, unadulterated alpha competence. As you can see from this quarterly projection matrix, William said smoothly, his deep voice carrying perfectly over the microphone, by optimizing the shipping routes using algorithmic predictive modeling, we can reduce carbon emissions by a staggering 22%. Moving on to the structural implementation, William confidently clicked the remote for the next slide. Instead of a pie chart, the massive projector screen behind him flickered. The sophisticated ambient lighting of the auditorium was suddenly pierced by the deafening, bass-boosted intro of a cheesy, early 2000s club anthem. To the window. To the wall. The VIPs jumped in their seats. William froze, his laser pointer dropping to the floor. On the 50-foot screen was a high-definition video of a dimly lit VIP club lounge. There, front and center, was the usually terrifying, unflappable William. His designer tie was tied around his forehead like a ninja headband. His suit jacket was nowhere to be seen. He was swaying violently, completely inebriated, holding a neon blue cocktail in one hand while aggressively attempting, and spectacularly failing, to do the moonwalk. Behind him in the video, his stoic right-hand man, Marcus, was sobbing dramatically while hugging a decorative potted palm tree. And that, drunk William slurred loudly on the speakers, pointing aggressively at the camera, is how you optimize a dance floor, mathematically speaking. Now watch me do the worm. The entire auditorium descended into absolute chaos. The freshmen in the back rows were howling. A wealthy board member in the front row spit his mineral water all over the dean's lap. William spun around to stare at the screen, all the blood draining from his aristocratic face. His eyes darted to the back of the auditorium. There, leaning against the velvet double doors, was Leo. The Omega was practically folded in half, clutching his stomach, tears of hysterical laughter streaming down his face. He caught William's eye and offered a cheeky, two-fingered salute. Turn it off. William barked at the AV booth, his alpha composure shattering into a million pieces. I said, turn it off. It took another 30 seconds of drunk William attempting the worm before the screen finally went black. But the damage was done. The pristine, intimidating image of Crestview's top student was permanently, hilariously ruined. 2 hours later, the atmosphere in Principal Higgins' office was so thick you could cut it with a chainsaw. The office was crowded. On the left leather sofa sat Leo, Julian, and 2 other Omegas, all trying very hard to look innocent and failing because Julian was still occasionally stifling a snort. On the right sofa sat William, looking like he was contemplating premeditated murder, beside a deeply humiliated Marcus, who was refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Principal Higgins, a beta with thinning hair and a blood pressure level that was rapidly reaching critical mass, stood behind his desk. Several exhausted-looking professors flanked him. I have been an educator for 30 years, Higgins began, his voice dangerously low, rubbing his temples as if trying to massage the impending aneurysm away. I have dealt with scandals. I have dealt with rivalries. I have never dealt with a sabotage that involved the heir to a tech empire doing the worm in front of the CEO of Global Logistics. He hacked my presentation drive. William snarled, pointing a lethal finger at Leo. That is a violation of the academic honor code. He should be expelled. I didn't hack anything. Leo shot back, throwing his hands up defensively. You left your laptop unlocked in the library because you're arrogant and think no one would dare touch it. I simply appended a multimedia file to enhance the visual experience. It was character assassination. Marcus whimpered from the couch. My mother is going to see that video. I hugged a ficus. You both need to shut up. Higgins roared, slamming his palms onto the mahogany desk. The sheer volume silenced the room instantly. Both faction leaders snapped their mouths shut, eyes wide. Higgins glared at them, pacing behind his desk. I am tired of this. Tired. You two are the most brilliant students to walk through these doors in a decade. You have the highest IQs, the best analytical skills, and the emotional maturity of feral toddlers. Leo opened his mouth to argue. But Principal Higgins, he stole. Higgins fixed Leo with a glare so venomous it could have melted steel. Leo audibly clicked his teeth together, sinking back into the leather cushions. Not a word, Mr. Sterling. You sabotaged a university-sponsored event. And you, Mr. Vance, Higgins snapped at William, you allowed your rivalry to blind your judgment, failing to secure confidential university hardware. Your egos are out of control. Since my authority doesn't seem to command your respect, perhaps your bank accounts will. Higgins reached for the sleek conference phone on his desk and jabbed the speaker button. He dialed 2 numbers. The phone rang. It picked up. Principal Higgins, a cold, sharp voice echoed through the room. It was Arthur Vance, William's father. I trust you have a good reason for interrupting my board meeting. Before Higgins could speak, a second voice merged into the call. Arthur, are you on this call too? Higgins, what is the meaning of this? It was Eleanor Sterling, Leo's mother. Sounding equally terrifying. Mr. Vance, Mrs. Sterling, Higgins said smoothly. I have both of your sons in my office. I'm calling regarding a severe disciplinary infraction. The color drained from both Leo and William's faces. The smugness evaporated completely. Higgins summarized the event with painful accuracy. The silence on the phone line was heavier than a black hole. William, Arthur Vance's voice was like cracking ice. You allowed yourself to be intoxicated in a public venue, recorded, and then failed to secure your presentation. Are you an heir, or are you a court jester? William flinched, his hands gripping his knees tight. Father, silence. We will discuss this lack of discipline at home. And you, Leo, Eleanor Sterling's voice dripped with aristocratic disappointment. A shipping heir acting like a cheap tabloid paparazzo. Resorting to petty pranks because you lost a project. How terribly, disgustingly tacky. Leo shrank into the sofa. Mom, he started it. I do not care who started it. You humiliated yourself and this family's name by being petty. After Higgins ended the call, the 2 boys looked thoroughly beaten. The comedy of the situation was gone, replaced by the heavy reality of their overbearing families. For a split second, William glanced at Leo, and Leo glanced back. In that briefest of moments, there was a flash of mutual understanding. They both knew exactly how suffocating those parental expectations felt. But the moment passed, and the glares returned. Now, Higgins said, sitting down heavily and clasping his hands together. For the university's punishment, your little war ends today. First, you will both handwrite a 1,000-word formal apology. To me, to the board, and to the VIP guests. Handwrite. Leo gasped, looking at his perfectly manicured nails. My wrist will snap. Second, Higgins continued loudly, ignoring him, you are both suspended from Crestview University for 1 week. Effective immediately. You are not to step foot on this campus. William's jaw dropped. Suspended. Principal Higgins, the midterm evaluations are next week. I need access to the laboratories. You should have thought of that before you decided to treat my university like a playground, Higgins replied coldly. And finally, because this incident ruined an official graded presentation, both of your final grades for this semester's project will be deducted by 20%. 20%. Both boys yelled in unison, jumping up from the couches. For top-tier perfectionists, a 20% deduction was worse than a death sentence. Yes. A direct hit to your precious marks, Higgins smiled, a terrifying, victorious curve of his lips. Get out of my office. Go home. And pray you find some maturity before you return. For 7 agonizing days, the heirs of Crestview University experienced a flavor of hell previously unknown to their privileged lives. Leo was stripped of his black cards, his sports cars, and his freedom. He spent the week locked in the Sterling family penthouse, subjected to grueling lectures from his mother about brand reputation, while being forced to handwrite 1,000 excruciating apologies. His wrist cramped, his pride bled, and his hatred for William Vance multiplied exponentially. William's punishment was arguably worse. His father didn't yell, Arthur Vance used cold, silent disappointment. William was banned from the company servers, his laboratory access revoked, and he was forced to spend the week in the corporate archives, organizing physical files like an entry-level intern. Every paper cut was a searing reminder of the Omega who had ruined his flawless track record. By the time Friday evening arrived, both of them felt like coiled springs ready to snap. The collision at Neon Eden. The base at Neon Eden, the city's most exclusive underground club, vibrated through the floorboards, shaking the crystal glasses on the VIP tables. Leo was draped over a velvet sofa, a half-empty martini in his hand. Julian and the rest of his group were gathered around, shouting over the music. I swear, if I have to see his perfectly styled, stupidly silver hair on Monday, I might actually throw my textbook at his head, Leo groaned, tipping his head back. He's a robot. A joyless, calculating, fun-ruining robot. A robot who does the worm, Julian giggled, instantly covering his mouth. Leo smirked, the memory the only thing getting him through the week. Okay, that was the only good part. But still, I hate. Leo's words died in his throat. Across the flashing strobe lights of the dance floor, being escorted to the VIP booth directly opposite theirs, was a group in dark, tailored jackets. Leading them, looking impossibly sharp and equally miserable, was William. William locked eyes with Leo instantly. The air across the club seemed to crackle. Marcus, standing behind William, groaned audibly. Tell me we are not sitting next to the Sterling Circus. I cannot afford another suspension. My mother took my espresso machine, William. My espresso machine. Ignore them, William commanded, his voice tight. He sat down heavily, not breaking eye contact with Leo. We are here to relax. If they provoke us, do not engage. I will not give my father another reason to look at me like a disappointment. Leo gripped his martini glass. Don't look at them, he hissed to his friends. If we start a fight, Principal Higgins will actually murder us and bury us under the football field. For the first 2 hours, it was a cold war. They sat in their respective booths, glaring daggers through the neon lights, aggressively ignoring each other while aggressively drinking. But alcohol is the enemy of logic, and fate is the enemy of restraint. By 1 a.m., the rigid, hateful postures had melted into sloppy, uncoordinated giggles. The invisible boundary between the two VIP booths had somehow vanished. Marcus and Julian were currently leaning against the same speaker, arguing passionately and incoherently about the macroeconomic impact of designer handbags. Leo was entirely, undeniably wasted. He was leaning against the back of his sofa, laughing so hard at a joke he couldn't remember that his sides hurt. He looked over and saw William. The alpha had loosened his tie, his hair was messy, and he was looking at Marcus with an expression of pure, exasperated disbelief. You're so stupid, Leo slurred, stumbling up from his seat and pointing a wobbly finger at William. William looked up, his golden brown eyes glazed. Instead of a sharp retort, a huff of laughter escaped him. You're the one trying to balance on 6-inch heels after 4 martinis, Sterling. You look like a newborn giraffe. They are boots. Vintage. Leo marched over, entirely forgetting the hatred, the suspension, and the rules. The alcohol had washed away the mortal bitterness, leaving only a chaotic, dizzying gravity. Leo intended to poke William in the chest again, but his heel caught on the edge of the carpet. He pitched forward with a squeak. Instead of letting him fall, William's reflexes fired. His hands shot out, catching Leo by the waist. But the momentum was too much, and Leo crashed right into William's lap, straddling his thighs. The entire club should have stopped. Their friends should have gasped. But the music pounded on, and everyone was too intoxicated to notice the two mortal enemies suddenly occupying the same chair. Whoops, Leo giggled, his hands coming up to rest on William's broad shoulders to steady himself. He didn't move to get up. Your lap is surprisingly comfortable for a robot. William's breath hitched. The scent of sweet jasmine and rain suddenly overwhelmed the smell of alcohol and club smoke. His conscious, logical mind was drowning in tequila, but deep beneath the surface, his ancient, dormant soul woke up with a violent jolt. Mine. William's hands didn't push the Omega away. Instead, they tightened on Leo's waist, pulling him flush against his chest. The grip was possessive, desperate, and entirely instinctual. Leo stopped giggling. The world around them, the neon lights, the thumping bass, the loud chatter, faded into absolute silence. The temperature in the booth spiked. Leo looked down into William's eyes and saw a flash of pure, terrifying gold. A phantom weight suddenly felt like it was resting on Leo's head, like a crown, and an inexplicable warmth bloomed in his chest. William, Leo whispered, his voice trembling, not with anger, but with a profound, terrifying ache. You talk too much, William murmured, his voice a dark, velvet rasp that didn't sound like the university rival. It sounded older, deeper. William leaned up, his face moving so close to Leo's that their breaths mingled. His nose brushed against Leo's jawline, instinctively seeking the scent gland at his neck. Leo let out a soft, broken whimper, his fingers curling into the fabric of William's shirt. The past life bond, starved for 500 years, was screaming to claim what was lost. William's lips ghosted over Leo's, the electric tension snapping like a live wire. Neither of them knew what was happening. They just knew they couldn't stop it. The sunlight filtering through the blackout curtains of the penthouse hotel suite was violently bright. Leo groaned, his head pounding with a monumental hangover. He rolled over onto his side, expecting to feel the cold silk of his own sheets. Instead, his hand brushed against something warm, solid, and undeniably bare. Leo cracked one eye open. Lying next to him, fast asleep on his stomach, with the white duvet tangled around his waist and his broad, scarred back fully exposed, was William Vance. For 3 seconds, Leo's brain simply refused to process the information. Then, the fragmented memories of the club, the lap, the heat, the desperate, tearing urgency as they stumbled into a private elevator, came crashing down like an avalanche. Oh my God, Leo whispered in pure horror. Instinct took over. Leo brought his leg back and delivered a swift, merciless kick to William's side. Ah! William jolted awake, tumbling off the edge of the mattress and crashing onto the hardwood floor with a heavy thud. What the hell is wrong with you? William roared, his voice hoarse as he scrambled up, grabbing a pillow to cover himself. He glared at Leo, ready to unleash a tirade, but then he took in the scene. The hotel room was a disaster. Clothes were scattered everywhere. Leo was sitting up, clutching the sheets to his chest, his eyes wide with sheer panic. William's face drained of color. The furious alpha curse died on his tongue. He looked down at his own bare chest, then at Leo's flushed, terrified face. The reality of what they had done, the absolute, catastrophic crossing of every single boundary they had, settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. They couldn't look each other in the eye. Leo swallowed hard, scrambling out of the other side of the bed and frantically gathering his clothes from the floor. He didn't look back. This didn't happen, Leo said, his voice shaking so badly he could barely get the words out as he pulled his shirt over his head. It was the alcohol. We were out of our minds. It was a mistake. William stood frozen, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the pillow. His logical brain agreed perfectly. It was a catastrophic error, a drunken lapse in judgment. But deep inside his chest, beneath his ribs, a phantom wound throbbed violently. Looking at Leo turning his back to leave felt like someone was ripping his heart out with bare hands. Agreed, William forced out, his voice sounding hollow and dead. A complete mistake. We speak of this to no one. We forget it. Forgotten, Leo said quickly. He grabbed his shoes, not even bothering to put them on, and bolted for the door. As the heavy door clicked shut behind the Omega, William sank onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. He couldn't understand it. He hated Leo Sterling. He had always hated him. So why did his soul feel like it was currently bleeding to death on the hotel floor? While the human heirs fled from their terrifying, inexplicable connection, the Jade Abyss was alive with a fierce, ancient energy. In the center of the restored plaza, Elder Voran stood before the gathered masses of immortal snake shifters. The gray skies that had haunted the realm for 500 years were finally breaking, revealing cracks of brilliant, golden sunlight. The spark has been ignited. Voron's voice thundered across the city, carrying the weight of centuries. Their souls have touched in the mortal realm. The Alpha of Shadows and the Omega of Light have found each other in the dark. A deafening cheer erupted from the warriors and ministers. But they are blinded by their human lives. Voron continued, striking his staff against the stone. Their mortal minds reject the bond, framing it as rivalry and mistake. We cannot wait for them to figure it out. The longer they remain ignorant, the more vulnerable they are. Voron turned toward the steps of the Obsidian Hall, where two figures knelt in the shadows. General Kale, Scout Lyra, come forward. Two shifters stepped into the light. Kale, a massive, scarred alpha warrior with scales like polished iron, and Lyra, a lithe, venomous beta with eyes like shattered glass. They bowed deeply. You have been chosen for the infiltration, Voron commanded. You will cross the veil into the human world. You will integrate into their surroundings at this, Crestview, Academy. Your mission is absolute: find King William and Queen Leo. Protect them from the shadows, and find the trigger to shatter the mortal glass around their memories. Kale looked up, his eyes fierce. How will we know what will break the seal, Elder? Trauma, extreme danger, or an act of pure, undeniable sacrifice, Voron replied grimly. Push them if you must. Guard them with your lives. Do whatever it takes, but bring our king and queen home. The 1-week suspension was officially over, but for Leo and William, returning to Crestview University felt like walking straight into a minefield blindfolded. It was Monday morning, and the student lounge was buzzing. Leo sat at his usual corner table, flanked by his entourage. He was wearing an oversized, thick cashmere turtleneck. It was 72 degrees inside the building. Leo, are you sick? Julian asked, sipping an iced matcha. You've been vibrating since we got here, and you look like you're dressed for an expedition to the Arctic. I am practicing high fashion, Julian, Leo snapped, nervously tugging the collar up higher. It's avant-garde. You wouldn't understand. In reality, there was a faint, bruised mark on the sensitive skin of his neck. A mark William had left during their drunken blur, exactly where a snake shifter would place a claiming bite. Leo didn't know why the sight of it in the mirror made his heart race and his knees weak, but he knew he couldn't let anyone see it. The heavy double doors of the lounge swung open. The room fell into a hush as William Vance walked in, flanked by Marcus. William looked immaculate. His navy blazer was sharp, his posture rigid, and his expression terrifyingly blank. But under his eyes were dark circles that not even the most expensive concealer could hide. He hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, his treacherous brain replayed the sensation of Leo's soft skin and the haunting, jasmine-scented pheromones. As William walked past Leo's table, their eyes locked. For 2 agonizing seconds, the world stopped. Leo's breath hitched, a furious blush creeping up his neck. William's hands curled into tight fists at his sides, his golden brown eyes dropping involuntarily to Leo's lips before snapping away. Vance, Leo coughed, trying to sound venomous but sounding mostly like he was choking on air. Sterling, William replied, his voice a gravelly octave lower than usual. He quickly averted his gaze and marched to the opposite side of the lounge. Okay, what is going on? Julian whispered loudly. Did you two fight again? Why is the air suddenly so thick I need a machete to cut through it? Nothing is going on, Leo practically squeaked. While the human drama unfolded, Principal Higgins was currently staring in utter bewilderment at the 2 new transfer students sitting in his office. So, Kale and Lyra, Higgins said, looking at the forged paperwork the Snake Realm Elders had magically generated. You are transferring from a private academy in the mountains. A very isolated academy. Kale, standing at 6'5" and looking like he could bench press a truck, simply glared at the principal with unblinking, predatory intensity. He was wearing a Crestview uniform, but he looked like he wanted to rip it off and bite someone. Lyra, sitting elegantly with a sweet, dangerous smile, kicked Kale under the desk. Yes, Principal Higgins, Lyra said in a melodic, perfectly practiced human voice. We have lived very, sheltered lives. We are here to observe modern, academic customs. Right, Higgins sighed, too exhausted by the Vance-Sterling rivalry to question these intimidating teenagers. Well, your schedules are printed. Welcome to Crestview. Please don't break anything. The moment they stepped out of the office, Kale growled. I don't like this disguise. The fabric restricts my coils. And that principal spoke to us with zero reverence. I should have eaten him. We are not eating the faculty, Kale, Lyra whispered, adjusting her designer backpack. Remember the Elder's orders. Find the king and queen. Observe. Protect. Blend in. They turned the corner and immediately spotted them. Through the glass walls of the student lounge, they saw William sitting rigidly at a table, staring blankly at a laptop, while Leo sat across the room, aggressively stirring a coffee. Kale dropped to one knee, bowing his head right there in the hallway. My king. My queen. Get up, you idiot. Lyra hissed, hauling him up by his collar as a group of human students walked by, giving them strange looks. They don't know who they are. We have to act normal. Normal, Kale grunted. He narrowed his eyes, observing the distance between William and Leo. Why is the queen sitting so far from the alpha? And why does the king look like he wants to destroy the table with his mind? Has a war started? I don't know, Lyra analyzed, her snake-like eyes darting between the two boys. But the spiritual tension between them is massive. Something happened. We watch. Later that afternoon, the tension finally snapped. Leo was at the campus cafe, trying to focus on his laptop. Julian had abandoned him to go to a spa appointment, leaving Leo alone and vulnerable to his own spiraling thoughts. Is this seat taken? Leo looked up. Standing over him was Sebastian, the alpha captain of the Crestview rowing team. Sebastian was ridiculously handsome, with floppy blonde hair, a dazzling smile, and the kind of broad shoulders that usually made Omegas swoon. Oh, hi, Sebastian. No, go ahead, Leo said politely. Sebastian slid into the chair, leaning forward with an easy, charming grin. I haven't seen you around this week. I heard you and Vance got into a massive fight with the principal. You know, if you ever need a break from dealing with that uptight robot, my family has a yacht down at the marina. We could go out this weekend. Just the two of us. Sebastian reached out, casually placing his large hand over Leo's where it rested on the table, his thumb tracing Leo's knuckles. Leo froze. He wasn't entirely opposed to Sebastian, but right now, the touch felt wrong. His skin crawled slightly. From the other side of the cafe, a mechanical pencil snapped perfectly in half with a loud crack. William had been sitting at a booth, ostensibly reading a textbook on quantum mechanics, but in reality, he had been hyper-aware of Leo's every breath. When Sebastian sat down, William's jaw clenched. When Sebastian touched Leo's hand, William's logical brain completely short-circuited. The ancient, dormant soul of the Snake King didn't care about university rules, or their fight, or the fact that they were supposed to be enemies. The king saw another alpha touching his Omega. Mine. William didn't realize he was moving until he was already there. Sterling, William's voice boomed, freezing the entire cafe. It was laced with a dark, suffocating alpha command that made Sebastian instinctively pull his hand back as if he had been burned. Leo jumped, looking up at William with wide eyes. Vance. What? You were late for our peer review session, William said, his eyes flashing with a terrifying, golden intensity as he glared down at Sebastian. If looks could kill, the rowing captain would be a pile of ash on the linoleum floor. Peer review. Leo stammered, utterly confused. We don't have. Get your bag, William commanded, grabbing Leo by the elbow and hauling him up from the chair. He didn't even look at Sebastian. He is busy. Go row a boat. Before Leo could protest, William was dragging him out of the cafe, his grip on Leo's arm firm, possessive, and radiating heat. Outside, hiding behind a decorative shrub, Kale and Lyra watched the scene unfold. Did you see the king's eyes? Kale whispered, grinning fiercely. The alpha instinct is awakening. He almost ripped that mortal's head off. Excellent, Lyra noted in a small notebook. Jealousy is a powerful trigger. Let us see how the queen responds. William practically dragged Leo down the empty West Wing hallway, finally shoving him into an abandoned lecture hall and slamming the heavy oak doors shut. Leo stumbled, catching his balance and turning around with a furious glare. What is your problem? Have you completely lost your mind? William was pacing like a caged predator, his chest heaving. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, ruining it. What was that? What were you doing with him? I was having coffee. Leo yelled, throwing his hands in the air. Sebastian was asking me out. You know, a normal human interaction. Something you clearly know nothing about. William stopped pacing, whipping around to face Leo. The distance between them vanished in 2 strides. He towered over the Omega, his chest rising and falling rapidly. You are not going on a yacht with him, William snarled, the words tearing out of his throat before his logical brain could stop them. Leo's breath hitched. He looked up at William, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Excuse me. You don't get to tell me what to do, William. We are rivals. We hate each other. We made a mistake in a hotel room, and we agreed to forget it. You don't own me. I don't care about the agreement. William yelled back, the sheer volume and raw emotion startling them both. The silence that followed was deafening. The echo of William's shout hung in the air of the empty lecture hall. William stared at Leo, looking completely terrified of himself. His hands were shaking. He didn't understand why the thought of Leo with someone else made him feel like he was dying. He didn't understand why, when he looked at Leo, he saw flashes of a white silk robe and a bloody stone floor. Why? Leo whispered, his voice suddenly small, his hazel eyes searching William's face. Why do you care so much? Why are you doing this to me? William closed his eyes, a pained expression twisting his handsome face. He stepped closer, the magnetic pull undeniable. He reached out, his hand trembling, and gently, hesitantly, rested his palm against Leo's cheek. His thumb brushed over the high collar of the turtleneck, right over the spot where the phantom mark lay hidden. I don't know, William breathed, his voice a desperate, broken whisper. He opened his eyes, staring into Leo's with a vulnerability that stripped away all the arrogant armor of the tech air. I don't know, Leo. I just know that when he touched you, I wanted to burn the building down. Leo let out a soft gasp, leaning into the touch before he could stop himself. The air between them was electric, thick with centuries of unspoken vows. William leaned down, his gaze dropping to Leo's lips, the gravity pulling them together once again. Bam! The lecture hall doors burst open. Kale tripped over the threshold, having clearly been leaning too hard against the wood to eavesdrop. Lyra stood behind him, pinching the bridge of her nose in profound disappointment. William and Leo sprang apart as if struck by lightning, both flushing crimson. Oh, Kale said in a loud, incredibly robotic voice, staring at the ceiling. Do not mind us, fellow mortal students. We are simply inspecting the hinges of this door. Please continue your peer reviewing. William cleared his throat loudly, straightening his blazer, his alpha mask snapping back into place, though his face was still burning red. We were just finishing. Excuse me. He marched past Kale and Lyra, fleeing the room as fast as he could. Leo stood frozen by the blackboard, his hand touching his cheek where William's warmth still lingered, utterly bewildered and terrified by the fact that he wanted William to come back. The roof of the Crestview University Library was strictly off-limits, making it the perfect war room for 2 immortal snake shifters. Lyra was pacing back and forth, tapping a silver pen against her chin, while Kale sat on an AC unit, looking profoundly miserable. The library incident proved one thing, Lyra deduced, adjusting her stylish glasses. The mortal amnesia is thick, but the soul bond is thicker. The king almost went primal over a rowing captain holding the queen's hand. We need to push that button until it breaks the glass. I agree. We should hire a human to flirt with the queen, Kale grunted, crossing his massive arms. No, Lyra smiled, a terrifying, venomous curve of her lips. Humans are too fragile. The king might actually kill them. You are going to do it, Kale. Kale's eyes widened to the size of saucers. He nearly fell off the AC unit. Me? Are you out of your mind? Have you forgotten what King William did to Lord Kalen? He crushed his heart with his bare hand. If I flirt with the Omega Queen, the king will turn my scales into a designer belt once his memories return. You are immortal, you can take a punch, Lyra waved off his concern. Besides, you are doing this for the Jade Abyss. For their love. Think of Elder Vorin. Think of the sad, empty throne. Kale whimpered, a sound that did not fit his 6'5", muscle-bound frame. He is going to murder me. I am going to die for the realm. Stop whining. You're a warrior, Lyra commanded. Operation Jealousy commences at lunch. Be charming. Be aggressive. Make the king lose his mind. Plan 1. The suicidal flirtation. The campus courtyard was packed. Leo was sitting on a stone bench, sketching a new supply chain model in his notebook, entirely unaware of the impending doom approaching him. William was sitting 3 tables away with Marcus, pretending to read a Financial Times article while actually monitoring Leo's peripheral movements like a hawk. Target acquired, Cale muttered into a microscopic earpiece Lyra had given him. Go. Be romantic, Lyra's voice buzzed in his ear from her hiding spot in the bushes. Cale marched up to Leo's bench. He stood there, looming like a skyscraper, casting a massive shadow over Leo's notebook. Leo looked up, blinking in surprise. Oh, Cale, right, the transfer student, Leo asked politely. Cale remembered Lyra's advice, compliment his appearance but make it intense. Leo Sterling, Cale announced, his voice booming across the courtyard. Your hair is exceptionally glossy today. It reminds me of a freshly shed skin of a premium python. Very high quality. Leo stared at him, utterly bewildered. Thank you. I have observed you, Cale continued, leaning down slightly, sweat forming on his brow as he felt a terrifying, heavy alpha aura suddenly radiating from 3 tables away. He didn't need to look to know William was glaring at him. You are small, but you have a fierce spirit. I wish to escort you to the cafeteria line and purchase your nutrients. Leo let out a confused laugh. Nutrients? You mean lunch? It's fine, Cale, I'm not really hungry. Cale took a step closer, practically vibrating with fear as the alpha pressure in the air spiked. Nonsense. An omega of your stature requires premium sustenance. Allow me to carry your bag. Cale reached out and grabbed Leo's designer backpack. Crack. At the nearby table, the heavy, reinforced plastic of William's coffee cup exploded in his grip. Cold brew splashed everywhere, but William didn't even notice. He was already on his feet, his chair scraping violently against the concrete. Vance, your coffee. Marcus yelped. William ignored him. He stalked toward the bench, his eyes locked onto Cale's hand holding Leo's bag. The air grew so thick with William's territorial pheromones that several human students nearby suddenly felt dizzy and walked away. Is there a problem here? William demanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that sounded less like a college student and more like a predator defending its nest. Cale swallowed hard, taking a calculated step back. Mission accomplished, he's going to kill me, Cale thought frantically. No problem, Vance, Leo said, standing up and grabbing his bag back from Cale, though his cheeks were dusted with pink at William's sudden, aggressive intervention. Cale was just talking about my hair. Weirdly, William stepped between Cale and Leo, completely blocking the taller boy from Leo's view. He is not interested. Go find your nutrients elsewhere, transfer. Cale bowed stiffly, a little too respectfully for a human rivalry, and practically sprinted away. William turned back to Leo, his chest heaving slightly. He looked at Leo's lips, then his neck, before forcing his gaze up to Leo's eyes. Are you okay? William asked, his voice softening inexplicably. I'm fine, Leo breathed, his heart doing the terrifying flutter again. You didn't have to crush your coffee cup over it, you know. I can handle myself. I know you can, William murmured, stepping just an inch closer. But I don't like him looking at you. Before Leo could process that incredibly loaded statement, the bell rang. William blinked, shaking his head as if waking from a trance, and quickly walked away, leaving Leo clutching his notebook to his chest. Plan 2, the locked room strategy. Plan 1 was a partial success, but it only triggered his protective instinct, not his memory. Lyra debriefed Cale in the empty hallway later that afternoon. Cale was still shaking. We escalate to Plan 2. Proximity. We force them to talk about the tension. Lyra had slipped forged notes into both William and Leo's lockers, instructing them to meet Professor Vance in the deep archive room of the library to organize old thesis files. At exactly 4 p.m., Leo pushed open the heavy wooden door of the archives. It was dusty, dimly lit, and smelled of old paper. A second later, William walked in, stopping dead in his tracks when he saw Leo. What are you doing here? They both asked in unison. Before either could answer, the heavy door slammed shut behind them with a loud thud. There was the distinct click of a deadbolt turning. William immediately strode to the door, jiggling the brass handle. It's locked. He pounded his fist against the wood. Hey, is someone out there? Open this door. Outside, Lyra smirked, pocketing the key and waving Cale to follow her. We give them an hour. Let the chemistry simmer. Inside the archives, the silence was suffocating. There was no cell service this deep in the building. Leo sighed, sliding down to sit on the edge of a dusty table. Great. Trapped in a closet with my mortal enemy. I'd rather be locked in with Kale. At least he thinks my hair is high quality. William turned around, his eyes flashing in the dim light. Don't joke about him. He was invading your space. Why do you care, William? Leo challenged, crossing his arms. The enclosed space was making him brave. The smell of William's cologne, cedarwood and something sharp and metallic, like ozone, was filling the tiny room. Last week, we agreed the hotel was a mistake. We agreed to forget it. But you keep hovering. You keep looking at me like what? William challenged, stepping closer until he was standing right between Leo's parted knees, caging him against the table. Leo looked up, his breath catching. Like you want to do it again. William let out a ragged breath, his hands coming down to grip the edge of the table on either side of Leo's hips. Because my mind says it was a mistake, Leo. But my body. William leaned down, his forehead resting lightly against Leo's. My body thinks you belong to me. And it is driving me insane. Leo let out a soft whimper, his hands coming up to grip William's blazer. The logic was completely gone. In the dark of the archives, there was no university, no rival families. Just the Alpha and the Omega. William tilted his head, his lips brushing against Leo's in a desperate, bruising kiss. Leo kissed back fiercely, his fingers tangling in William's perfectly styled hair. The heat was explosive. It was exactly like the hotel, a sudden, uncontrollable magnetic crash. Click. The door swung open. A librarian stood there, looking horrified. William and Leo practically vaulted away from each other, both gasping for air, their clothes rumpled and lips swollen. Lyra, watching from the end of the hall, groaned loudly. Curse these human librarians. They were right on the edge. Plan 3, the memory trigger. Words and kisses aren't enough, Lyra told Kale fiercely the next day in the auditorium. The drama club was setting up for a play. The seal on their souls was forged in death. We need danger. True danger. Lyra pointed to a massive, heavy wooden stage light rig suspended 20 feet above the stage. Leo was currently standing directly beneath it, helping a classmate paint a backdrop. William was sitting in the front row, reading, but Lyra knew his attention was entirely on Leo. I am going to snap the cable with a burst of spiritual energy, Lyra whispered. The rig will fall. It won't hit the queen, the king's reflexes will kick in. But the act of throwing himself over the Omega to protect him, it mirrors their past life trauma perfectly. Lyra, if you miscalculate, you will crush the queen. Kale hissed. Have faith in the Alpha King, Lyra said, her eyes glowing green. She focused her energy. A sharp, invisible blade of spiritual power sliced through the thick metal cable holding the rig. Snap. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The massive wooden and metal structure plummeted toward the stage, straight toward Leo. Leo, look out. Someone screamed. Leo looked up, freezing in pure terror as a ton of metal hurtled down. He couldn't move. But William moved. To the human eye, William was a blur. He didn't just run, the ancient, primal speed of the Snake Alpha erupted from his core. No, William roared. It wasn't the voice of a college student. It was a roar that vibrated the very foundations of the auditorium. William launched himself onto the stage, tackling Leo to the ground just a fraction of a second before the rig smashed into the floorboards where Leo had been standing. The impact was deafening, sending splintered wood and glass flying everywhere. William had thrown his entire body over Leo, completely shielding the Omega from the debris. In that explosive moment of impact, the world went completely silent for William. The auditorium vanished. The smell of paint and dust vanished. Suddenly, William saw cold, damp stone walls. He smelled blood and ozone. He felt jagged, black scales covering his skin. He looked down and saw, instead of a college student in a t-shirt, a beautiful young man in white silks, bleeding on the floor of a dark cavern. He felt the phantom agony of a shattered red shield. I love you, Prince C. The memory hit William's brain with the force of a freight train. The 500-year-old glass around his soul shattered into a million pieces. The dust began to settle in the auditorium. Students were screaming, rushing toward the stage. Underneath William, Leo was shaking uncontrollably but completely unharmed. William. Leo coughed through the dust, looking up at the boy shielding him. William, are you okay? You saved my life. William slowly raised his head. He wasn't looking at Leo like a rival anymore. The arrogant tech air was gone. His golden brown eyes were glowing with an intense, ancient, and heartbreakingly sorrowful light. A tear escaped his eye, tracking a line through the dust on his cheek. His hand came up, trembling, and he gently cupped Leo's face, his thumb stroking Leo's cheek with an agonizing familiarity. Leo, William whispered, his voice cracking with the weight of 500 years of grief and sudden, overwhelming relief. My queen, I finally found you. The campus infirmary was quiet, smelling of sterile alcohol and clean linen. William sat on the edge of the examination bed. The university doctor had cleared him of any concussions from the falling stage rig, but they couldn't diagnose what had actually happened to him. The mortal glass had shattered. William looked at his hands. He didn't just see the manicured nails of a tech heir, he saw the phantom flash of jagged, midnight black scales. He closed his eyes and breathed in, his senses suddenly magnified 100-fold. He could hear the heartbeat of a bird outside the window. He could smell the lingering scent of jasmine and rain on his own shirt, Leo's scent. My queen, William thought, a tear of profound, overwhelming relief sliding down his cheek. I killed you, and the universe gave you back to me. The door clicked shut, the deadbolt locking automatically. William looked up. Standing in the room were Kale and Lyra. The transfer student act was entirely gone. Kale dropped to one knee, bowing his massive head until it touched the linoleum floor. Lyra sank into a deep, graceful curtsy, her eyes glowing with reverence. My king, Kale rumbled, his voice trembling with emotion. You have awakened. William stood up. The modern blazer he wore suddenly seemed to drape over him like a royal mantle. The heavy, suffocating aura of the ancient snake alpha filled the tiny room, making Kale and Lyra lower their heads further. Lyra, William's voice was a dark, commanding baritone that had commanded armies 5 centuries ago. You cut the cable. I did, sire, Lyra confessed, not daring to look up. Elder Vorin prophesied that only true danger or sacrifice would shatter the mortal seal. I risked the queen's physical form to save your souls. I accept whatever punishment you deem fit. William walked over, his footsteps utterly silent, and placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. Rise. Both of you. You gave me my memory back. You saved me from a lifetime of fighting the only soul I was made to love. I owe you my sanity. Kale and Lyra stood, looking at their king with awestruck eyes. Sire, the realm rejoices, Kale said eagerly. For 500 years, the Jade Abyss has slept in shadows. The Heart of Cinnabar vanished the day you crossed the veil. Now that you are awake, we must return. The throne waits for its true rulers. William shook his head, turning to look out the window toward the campus courtyard. I am not going back. Not yet. But King William, Lyra started. Leo doesn't remember, William interrupted, his golden eyes filled with a fierce, protective ache. He looked at me with gratitude today, but he still sees William Vance, the rival. He doesn't see his husband. I will not drag him into a magical underworld he doesn't understand. The red stone will not return until the queen's soul is fully awakened. Then we must arrange another trigger. Kale suggested enthusiastically. I could push him out of a window, and you could catch him. William turned a terrifying glare onto Kale. If you lay a single finger on my Omega, or put him in harm's way again, I will personally feed you to the Mongoose clan. Is that understood? Crystal clear, sire, Kale squeaked, taking 3 steps. Back. We do this my way, William declared, a soft, devoted smile touching his lips. In the hotel, his soul responded to my touch. The mortal mind forgets, but the spirit remembers the bond. I am going to remind him who he is. I am going to overwhelm him with so much affection his human logic won't be able to keep the glass intact. The next morning, Crestview University was in a frenzy. The video of William Vance saving Leo Sterling from being crushed was trending on every student forum. The bitter rivalry had seemingly culminated in an act of extreme heroism. Leo was standing by his locker, hiding his face in his oversized cashmere sweater. His heart hadn't stopped racing since yesterday. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw William's terrifyingly intense, glowing eyes looking down at him. It's a manipulation tactic, Leo. I'm telling you, Julian was whispering frantically, looking up and down the hallway. He saved your life so he can hold it over you forever. It's the ultimate power play. He wants you to owe him. Julian, he threw himself under a ton of metal, Leo mumbled, his fingers nervously twisting the dial of his lock. I don't think you can fake that for academic brownie points. You don't know the tech bros. They are ruthless. Julian insisted. Good morning, Julian, a smooth, deep voice interrupted. Julian shrieked, dropping his textbook. William was standing there. But something was fundamentally, shockingly different. He wasn't wearing his stiff, buttoned-up uniform. He wore a soft, dark turtleneck and a casual coat, looking devastatingly handsome. More importantly, he wasn't glaring. William was looking at Leo with a smile so soft, so completely, utterly devoted, that it made Leo's knees feel like jelly. "V. Vance," Leo stammered, gripping his locker door for support. "What do you want? Did you come to gloat about saving my life?" William chuckled, a rich, vibrating sound that Leo felt in the soles of his feet. William stepped closer, completely ignoring Julian, who was staring with his mouth hanging open. "I brought you this," William said, holding out a sleek, insulated cup. "Iced macchiato, 3 pumps of vanilla, oat milk, and extra caramel drizzle. Just the way you like it." Leo stared at the cup as if it were a live grenade. "How do you know my coffee order? We've literally never had a civil conversation. I know every breath you take, my troublemaker," William thought. "A lucky guess," William lied smoothly, gently pressing the cup into Leo's hands. His fingers purposefully lingered, brushing against Leo's soft skin. "Are you feeling all right today? Your shoulder isn't bruised from the fall." Leo's face instantly turned the color of a ripe tomato. I'm fine. What is wrong with you? Did the rig hit you in the head?" Across the hall, Marcus dropped his tablet. "William," Marcus called out, bewildered. "We have a board meeting prep in 5 minutes. Why are you buying the enemy iced beverages?" "Cancel the prep, Marcus," William said without looking away from Leo. "I'm busy." William reached out, and to the absolute shock of the entire hallway, gently tucked a stray chestnut curl behind Leo's ear. "If you need anything today, Leo, absolutely anything. Just call me." With one last, lingering look at Leo's lips, William turned and walked away, leaving a trail of stunned silence in his wake. Did the robot just flirt with you?" Julian whispered in horror. Leo clutched the warm coffee cup to his chest, his heart hammering a frantic, joyous rhythm against his ribs. "Shut up, Julian," Leo squeaked, trying to sound angry to mask the massive, stupid butterflies erupting in his stomach. For the next 3 days, William Vance waged a relentless campaign of romantic terrorism. In advanced economics, William gave up his front row seat to sit in the back next to Leo, spending the entire lecture casually leaning into Leo's space and passing him perfectly written notes. During lunch, William intercepted Cale, who was still trying to look busy, and personally delivered a box of imported pastries to Leo's table, ignoring the terrified stares of Leo's friends. Leo was losing his mind. He tried to maintain his spoiled rival persona, but it was crumbling fast. On Thursday afternoon, Leo practically sprinted into an empty study room on the 3rd floor to escape the relentless attention. He leaned against the door, exhaling a massive breath. "You can't run from me forever, you know." Leo jumped. William was already in the room, sitting casually on the edge of the large oak table. "How did you get in here?" Leo demanded, his face flushing red immediately. "Stop following me, Vance. You are acting insane. My friends think you're plotting to murder me and hide my body in the server room." William stood up, closing the distance between them with that predatory, silent grace he had suddenly acquired. He stepped right into Leo's personal space, trapping him between the door and his own broad chest. "Let them think what they want," William murmured, looking down at the Omega. "I only care about what you think. I think you're playing a sick game," Leo said, looking up defiantly, though his voice betrayed him by trembling. "You hate me. We're rivals. We fight." "I have never hated you, Leo," William said softly, his golden eyes searching Leo's face. "I was just lost in the dark. And I was terrified of how much I wanted you. But I'm not terrified anymore." Leo's breath hitched. "Stop it. Stop saying things like that. It's not fair. You can't just flip a switch and act like we belong together." "But we do," William whispered, lifting his hand to gently cup Leo's jaw. His thumb grazed the side of Leo's neck, right over the spot where the invisible soul mark lay. A sudden jolt of electricity shot through Leo's veins. For a microsecond, the study room flickered, and Leo smelled the heavy scent of ancient incense and rain. He gasped, his hands flying up to grip William's arms to steady himself. What are you doing to me? Leo breathed, his eyes wide and confused, tears pricking the corners of his eyes from an ache he couldn't understand. William's heart broke at the confusion in his queen's eyes, but he smiled, a look of infinite patience. He leaned down and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to Leo's forehead. I am just reminding you, my troublemaker, William whispered against his skin. Pretend to be angry all you want. Push me away. But I will be right here. I've waited centuries for you, I can wait a little longer for you to wake up. William stepped back, leaving Leo leaning against the door, completely flustered, his heart soaring with a terrifying, undeniable happiness. As William walked out of the study room, Kale and Lyra peeked out from behind a bookshelf in the hallway. Plan affection is highly effective, Lyra noted, scribbling in her notebook. The Queen's mortal logic is breaking down. The blush was at a 90% saturation level. Good, William said as he walked past them, a true king's smile on his face. Prepare yourselves. We are getting our queen back. The penalty for ruining a university presentation with a drunken dance video was a 20% grade deduction. For Leo Sterling and William Vance, this was an academic catastrophe that required immediate remediation. Which is why, on a rainy Friday evening, Leo found himself standing outside the double mahogany doors of William's ultra-exclusive penthouse. If I don't text you in an hour, call the police, Leo muttered into his phone, pulling his oversized cashmere cardigan tighter around himself. He probably has a dungeon in there. Leo, he bought you an oat milk macchiato, Julian's voice crackled through the speaker. Tech bros don't buy oat milk for people they want to murder. They buy it for people they want to, you know. Just don't let him use his ridiculous broad shoulders to hypnotize you. I am completely immune to his shoulders, Leo lied smoothly. I am here for my GPA. Goodbye, Julian. Leo hung up and knocked. The door swung open instantly, but it wasn't William. It was a terrifyingly massive man crammed into a tuxedo that looked 2 sizes too small. It was Kale, the Queen. Kale bellowed, catching himself as Lyra smacked him in the back of the knee from the shadows. Kale cleared his throat, sweating profusely. I mean, the classmate has arrived. Welcome to the Vance residence. Please, surrender your coat. Leo blinked, slowly handing over his dripping coat. Kale, do you work here now? We are interning, Lyra lied flawlessly, emerging in a sleek black butler suit and holding a silver tray with a single, perfectly folded towel. The tech industry requires diverse skill sets. Please, dry your hair. The master, William, is waiting in the study. Leo took the towel, completely bewildered. Right, the internship. Leo walked into the main living space and his breath caught. The penthouse was a sprawling, modern masterpiece of dark marble, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, and sleek, minimalist furniture. It smelled intensely of William, cedarwood, rain, and that sharp, magnetic ozone scent that made Leo's pulse skip a beat. William was sitting at a massive glass dining table covered in logistics reports. He was wearing a simple, fitted black t-shirt that left absolutely nothing to the imagination regarding his arms, and a pair of dark slacks. When he looked up, the sheer, concentrated devotion in his golden brown eyes hit Leo like a physical blow. You're wet, William said softly, standing up immediately. It's raining, genius, Leo deflected, trying to mask his sudden nervousness with sass. He marched over to the table and dropped his designer bag. Let's get this over with. If we recalculate the port taxes, we can present a supplementary paper to Higgins and beg for 10% back. William didn't look at the papers. He walked around the table, stepping right into Leo's personal space. Without a word, he reached out and took the towel from Leo's hands. Hey, Shish, William murmured. He gently draped the towel over Leo's head and began to slowly, meticulously dry his damp chestnut curls. Leo froze. The simple, domestic intimacy of the action short-circuited his brain. He was supposed to be yelling at his rival. He was supposed to be fighting for academic dominance. Instead, he was standing perfectly still while William Vance dried his hair with the tender care of someone handling a priceless artifact. I can do it myself, Leo whispered, his voice completely betraying him by lacking any real conviction. I know you can, William said, his thumbs brushing lightly against Leo's temples as he pulled the towel away. But I want to. Behind the kitchen island, Kale was furiously taking notes on a tiny notepad while Lyra gave a silent, triumphant fist pump. Get out, William commanded, not even looking at his interns. Kale and Lyra scrambled out of the room so fast they nearly tripped over a priceless Ming vase. The silence in the penthouse stretched, thick and vibrating with tension. Leo practically threw himself into a chair, pulling a stack of papers toward him. Route A, Leo said, his voice an octave higher than normal. We optimize Route A. William sat in the chair directly next to him. Not across the table. Next to him. Their knees brushed. William, look at the spreadsheet, Leo groaned, staring rigidly at his laptop screen. I am optimizing my view, William replied, his chin resting on his hand as he openly, shamelessly stared at Leo's profile. You're impossible. Leo finally snapped, slamming his laptop shut. He spun around in his chair to face William, his hazel eyes flashing with frustration and something far more desperate. What is this? What is your endgame? For 3 months you act like I'm a disease, and now you're looking at me like you are the only thing in the world that matters. William offered calmly. Leo's breath hitched. A furious blush painted his cheeks down to his neck. Stop. Just stop. You can't just change the rules. You can't just act like you own me. You confuse me, William. 1 minute I want to strangle you, and the next minute. The next minute, what? William prompted, his voice dropping to that dark, velvet register that made Leo's spine melt. William reached out, his hand sliding over the glass table to cover Leo's. The heat of his palm was electric. The next minute my heart feels like it's going to beat out of my chest, Leo admitted in a small, defeated whisper. It feels like I've known you forever. And it terrifies me. The ancient Snake King couldn't hold back anymore. 500 years of waiting shattered against the vulnerability in his Omega's voice. William stood up, grabbing Leo's chair and spinning it smoothly so Leo was trapped between William's body and the edge of the desk. William leaned down, caging Leo in by placing both hands on the armrests. You don't need to be terrified, William breathed, his face inches from Leo's. His golden eyes were practically glowing in the dim light of the penthouse. Let it confuse you, let it tear down the walls. You don't have to understand it right now, Leo. You just have to feel it. Leo looked up at the Alpha's lips, his own parting involuntarily. William closed the distance. The kiss wasn't hesitant, it was a collision of souls. William's lips pressed against Leo's with a hungry, desperate passion that swept away the university, the grades, and modern world entirely. Leo let out a soft, muffled gasp, his hands flying up to grip William's shoulders. The Alpha tasted like dark honey and danger. William's hands left the armrests, sliding down to grip Leo's waist and haul him up out of the chair, pulling Leo flush against his solid chest. In an instant, the world tilted. As William's tongue traced Leo's lower lip, demanding entrance, a violent shockwave of spiritual energy ripped through Leo's mind. Flash. Instead of a glass dining table, Leo suddenly felt cold stone beneath his feet. Flash. Instead of William in a black t-shirt, Leo saw a man with flowing silver hair, draped in heavy black robes with gold embroidery, placing a crown of moissanite upon his head. Ooh, your scales are scratchy, a phantom voice, his own voice, echoed in his head. Leo gasped into the kiss, his fingers digging into William's hair. The memories weren't clear, they were fragmented, chaotic bursts of emotion. He felt a profound, bottomless grief. He felt the phantom weight of a massive, iridescent emerald tail. And most of all, he felt an ancient, unwavering love for the man currently holding him. Will, Leo whimpered between kisses, using the nickname he hadn't spoken in this lifetime. William froze. The sound of that nickname hitting his ears was like a lightning strike. He pulled back just a fraction of an inch, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with unshed tears. What did you call me? William whispered, his voice shaking. Leo opened his eyes. They were hazy, completely blown out with desire and confusion. He looked at William, his hands sliding down to rest against the Alpha's chest, right over his violently beating heart. I don't know, Leo breathed, panting softly. I felt scales. I saw a red stone. William, what's happening to me? Am I going crazy? William let out a choked sound, pulling Leo into a crushing embrace, burying his face in Leo's jasmine-scented neck. The mortal blast was cracking. The queen was waking up. You're not crazy, William murmured, pressing a reverent kiss to the faint, bruised mark on Leo's skin. You were just coming home. I've got you. I'm right here. Leo didn't understand the words, not entirely. But as he wrapped his arms around William's broad back, sinking completely into the Alpha's warmth, the rivalry, the jealousy, and the confusion faded to nothing. For the first time in 500 years, the Omega felt perfectly, undeniably safe. The air in the penthouse was thick with the scent of rain, jasmine, and centuries of delayed fate. Leo clung to William, his human mind spinning with fragmented visions of emerald scales and a shattered red stone, while his heart simply knew it was exactly where it belonged. William held him impossibly tight, burying his face in Leo's neck. The mortal blast was cracking. The queen was waking up. But the universe, it seemed, was not done testing them. A sudden, violent drop in temperature froze the condensation on the penthouse windows. The ambient lighting flickered, then died completely. The scent of ozone and cedarwood was instantly violently overpowered by the stench of sulfur, rotting leaves, and ancient venom. William, Leo whispered, shivering as the unnatural cold pierced his cashmere sweater. William's head snapped up, his golden eyes narrowed into dangerous, glowing slits. The romantic vulnerability vanished, replaced instantly by the lethal, calculating instincts of the Alpha King. He shoved Leo firmly behind his broad back. Get behind me. Do not move, William commanded, his voice vibrating with a terrifyingly deep resonance. From the shadows of the hallway, a thick, black mist began to pool on the marble floor. It swirled upward, taking the jagged, towering shape of a man. The eyes of the shadow burned with a sickly, necrotic green fire. 500 years, a voice rasped, echoing off the glass walls like grinding metal. I rotted in the void for 500 years, Alpha, waiting for your souls to shine bright enough for me to find you. William's jaw clenched. Kalen, the spirit of the Iron Viper clan leader laughed, a wet, hideous sound. You crushed my physical heart, King of Shadows, but the Soul Breaker's curse tethered my spirit to yours. And now, I see the Omega is vulnerable. He doesn't even know his own name. The desperate stand. The penthouse doors burst off their hinges. Kale and Lyra rushed in, their human disguises completely abandoned. Kale's arms were already shifting, thick iron-colored scales ripping through his tuxedo sleeves, while Lyra's eyes had turned into vertical green slits, her venom fangs bared. Protect the queen, William roared. Kalen's spirit lunged. He wasn't flesh and blood anymore. He was a manifestation of pure, hateful dark energy. Kale intercepted the shadow, throwing a massive, spiritually charged punch. But the shadow merely dispersed and reformed behind him, swatting the giant alpha aside like a ragdoll. Kale crashed through the glass dining table, wooden glass raining down. Lyra spat a stream of acidic venom, but the spirit deflected it with a wave of necrotic mist, backhanding her into the wall. She slumped to the floor, groaning. My turn, William snarled. He tapped into the deepest reserves of his soul. He tried to summon the form of the ancient ancestor, the massive black serpent form that had once defended the Jade Abyss. Black, jagged scales began to tear through the skin of his arms and neck, but the transformation stuttered. He gasped, falling to one knee. Without the Heart of Cinnabar anchoring the realm's magic, his human body couldn't handle the full primal shift. Kalen laughed triumphantly. He materialized a blade of pure shadow, an exact replica of the demon sword that had killed William centuries ago. You are weak, mortal, Kalen sneered, raising the shadow blade. Watch me slaughter your Omega, and then I will take my time with you. William forced himself up, intercepting Kalen's strike with his bare, scaled forearms. The impact sent a shockwave that shattered the floor-to-ceiling windows, letting the freezing rain pour into the penthouse. William screamed as the necrotic shadow burned his skin, driving him to his knees. He was bleeding, his strength failing against the immortal wraith. The shattering of the glass. Leo watched from the corner, his entire body trembling. He saw Kale and Lyra incapacitated. He saw the dark, terrifying monster looming over William. And he saw William, arrogant, brilliant, annoying William, bleeding on his knees, putting his body between Leo and absolute death. Watch me slaughter your Omega. The words triggered an avalanche in Leo's mind. Flash, a dark cavern. William turning into a primal beast to build a shield. Flash, the sickening crunch of a blow. Flash, dying in William's arms, tasting his own blood. Flash, I promise, my troublemaker. Wait for me. The human logic of Leo Sterling, the shifting air, the spoiled university student, the bitter rival, disintegrated completely. It burned away in the blazing, explosive inferno of the Omega Queen's awakening. William, Leo screamed. It wasn't the panicked cry of a college student. It was a sound laced with the ancient, melodic, and terrifying Alpha-Omega resonance. Leo didn't cower. He stepped forward. As he walked, his human clothes seemed to ripple. An ethereal, blindingly bright emerald light erupted from his skin. The ghost of an iridescent green serpent tail swept across the floor, knocking the debris aside. Kalen paused, looking back in sudden horror. You don't get to take him from me again. Leo shouted, his hazel eyes completely consumed by radiant, divine green fire. I am the light of the Jade Abyss, and you will not touch my king. Leo slammed his hands onto the marble floor. Heart of Cinnabar, hear me. Miles away, in the hidden dimension of the snake realm, the empty stone pedestal in the plaza suddenly ignited. Inside the penthouse, a tear in reality ripped open above Leo. The air hummed with a deafening frequency. From the portal dropped a massive, pulsating, brilliant red jewel. The Heart of Cinnabar had answered the call of its fully awakened queen. The stone hovered between Leo and William, bathing the destroyed penthouse in a warm, crimson, life-giving light. The two coils intertwined. The moment the red light touched William, the necrotic burns on his arms vanished. The human limitations placed on his soul evaporated. William stood up, his eyes blazing like miniature suns. The jagged, midnight black scales effortlessly coated his arms, his chest, and the side of his face. The King of Shadows was fully restored. William looked back at Leo. The Omega was glowing, standing tall, his spirit fierce and unyielding. You found me, Leo whispered, a tear of joy cutting through the fierce glow of his eyes. I never stopped looking, William vowed. William turned his attention back to Kalen. The wraith was shrinking, the pure spiritual energy of the red stone burning his shadow form like acid. Now, William growled, extending his hand. Leave my kingdom. William channeled the pure, destructive power of the Alpha, while Leo extended his hand, channeling the biting, purifying light of the Omega. The black lightning and the emerald fire intertwined flawlessly in the air, crashing through the Heart of Cinnabar, amplifying 1,000 times over. The combined beam of energy struck Kalen. The wraith didn't even have time to scream. The necrotic shadow was instantly vaporized, blown out into the rainy night sky, erased from existence forever. The storm outside suddenly broke. The clouds parted, letting the moonlight filter into the ruined penthouse. The return. The Heart of Cinnabar shrank, transforming into a small, glowing red jewel that embedded itself into a silver chain, falling gently into Leo's waiting palm. Kale and Lyra groaned, picking themselves up from the debris. Seeing their fully awakened rulers, they immediately dropped to their knees. Long live the king and queen, Kale rasped, grinning through a bloody lip. William didn't look at them. He walked over to Leo, stepping carefully over the shattered glass. He stopped inches away, taking in the sight of the boy he had loved for centuries. Leo, William asked softly, almost afraid the human persona would return and reject him. Leo looked up, a brilliant, mischievous, and entirely familiar smile spreading across his face. He reached out, grabbing the collar of William's ruined t-shirt. You know, Prince C, Leo murmured, his voice dripping with affection, you still owe me for ruining my eco-logistics project. That was a very low blow. William let out a choked, wet laugh, wrapping his arms around Leo's waist and lifting him entirely off the floor. I'll write you a 1,000-word apology. Leo threw his arms around William's neck, kissing him deeply, passionately, sealing the 500-year gap with the taste of rain, tears, and absolute victory. Epilogue. The dual sovereignty. The return to the Jade Abyss was a festival that lasted for 30 days and 30 nights. Elder Vorin wept openly when William and Leo walked through the gates of awakens, hand in hand, the Heart of Cinnabar glowing brightly on Leo's chest. The general nearly squeezed the life out of his son, and the orphans from the lower districts were treated to the greatest feast the realm had ever seen. The dead gardens bloomed, and the waterfalls of the abyss sparkled with renewed magic. But Leo Sterling and William Vance were no longer just the ancient rulers of a hidden realm. They were also modern 20-somethings with very demanding human parents and unfinished degrees. A month later, back in the human realm, William and Leo were sitting in the Crestview University library. William was wearing a sharp blazer, typing furiously on a laptop, while Leo was sitting sideways in his chair, his legs draped over William's lap, reading a textbook while absent-mindedly eating a peach. If we calculate the import tariffs correctly, we can still secure a passing grade for the semester, William stated, adjusting his glasses. Will, you literally command an army of immortal snake warriors. You can turn your art into a weapon of mass destruction. Do we really care about Professor Higgins' import tariffs? Leo sighed, popping a slice of peach into his mouth. My father called, William said flatly. If I do not graduate with honors, he is cutting off my trust fund. I cannot fund the rebuilding of the southern swamplands on an intern's salary, Leo. Leo giggled, leaning over to kiss William's cheek. Fine, but after graduation, I'm taking you on a vacation. To the human Bahamas. No elders, no council meetings, no Kale trying to offer me premium nutrients. William smiled, his head resting comfortably on Leo's ankle. He looked around the quiet library, then back to the Omega who held his entire immortal heart. They had fought through death, time, and university administration to find each other. Anywhere you want, my queen, William promised, his golden eyes filled with quiet, enduring peace. As long as you're there, I'm already home.